Daisy, with a focused expression, conducted an intricate experiment, channeling a shimmering energy into a flask where a mysterious liquid swirled. Various beakers and test tubes filled with different substances surrounded her, indicating a complex alchemical process. She carefully poured liquid from one bottle to another, the delicate clinking sound filling the air. Moments later, she placed a sign that read, Atelier Daisy, with a definitive thud, signaling the establishment of her workshop. Daisy then stretched happily outside her newly established atelier, her arms reaching towards the sky as she remarked on the beautiful weather, a wide smile gracing her face. The narrative then shifted abruptly, transporting the observer 5 years into the past, to the familiar grounds of the Priestleria house, where Seabass was diligently watering a vibrant rose garden. Seabass greeted a young Daisy, noting her cheerful disposition. She returned his greeting, asking about his current task, to which he replied that he was tending to the roses. She marveled at how wonderfully the roses were blooming, expressing her delight. Seabass, observing the lush growth, remarked that they had flourished even more since she began caring for the flowers. She pondered his words, acknowledging that her knowledge of gardening came solely from him and the other gardener. Her gaze sharpened, focusing intently on the details of the rose bushes. Seabass, scrutinizing the plants, noticed one particular rose bush appeared weak and realized it must have been overlooked. He concluded that weeds were likely depriving it of essential nutrients. Daisy giggled softly, and Seabass praised her observant eye as he swiftly removed the offending weeds from the base of the struggling rose, restoring its potential for growth. She agreed with a cheerful, okay, and Seabass, having finished his task of tending to the roses, suggested they go for tea. She sat quietly on the porch, sharing a peaceful moment with Yulia and Seabass as the morning unfolded around the Priestleria estate. As she sipped from her cup, her true identity and nascent abilities were revealed. Daisy Vaughn Priestleria, the 5-year-old second daughter of the Viscount, possessing full health and magic power, along with a developing skill in appraisal. Meanwhile, Yulia remarked to Seabass that the roses in the garden looked particularly fine this year, a testament to their diligent care. She then turned to Daisy, acknowledging her helpful assistance with the flowers and offering a polite thank you. Seabass, with a gentle chuckle, offered his apologies for the unexpected praise, while Daisy, feeling a touch of embarrassment, pouted slightly. Yulia, however, gently ruffled Daisy's hair, assuring her there was no need for shame and expressing a genuine desire to hear more about her activities. Indeed, a closer look at one of the rose bushes revealed it was unhealthy, its leaves eaten by small caterpillars. Daisy then explained that she possessed a rare skill called Appraisal, which allowed her to discern the intricate details and conditions of any particular thing. She elaborated that this skill could be applied to both humans and plants, and she resolved to tend to the ailing flowers later. Suddenly, a loud "Ba damn" echoed, followed by a "K blam" from outside, startling everyone. Daisy, her attention now diverted, quickly asked Seabass what time it was. Before Seabass could fully respond, she declared she had to go, rushing away from the table. Seabass, pulling out his pocket watch, calmly noted that it was just past 10. The loud impact of a powerful force splintered a wooden target, sending shards flying into the air. Moments later, Daisy's older brother stood, panting slightly, having just demonstrated his impressive power. Yulia observed, noting that while his technique was a bit rough, the sheer power was superb. Daisy, her eyes wide with admiration, exclaimed that her big brother was truly amazing. He thanked them profusely for their praise. Daisy then stepped forward, politely asking Miss Yulia if she could be next to practice. Yulia reassured her, stating that it was fine and they had only just begun. Daisy, bowing slightly, apologized for her tardiness. Yulia then instructed Daisy to observe carefully. Turning to another young woman, she directed Dahlia to aim for the next log, to which Dahlia confidently replied, "Got it." Dahlia concentrated, her hands moving with practiced grace as she unleashed a powerful wind blade towards the target. She celebrated her success, exclaiming that she had done it. Daisy, impressed, remarked on how amazing it was that Dahlia could hit the target from such a distance. Yulia, while acknowledging it as a good start, urged Dahlia to work on making her spell even more powerful. Dahlia, determined, declared that she needed to perfect her technique immediately, as a ceremony was fast approaching. Yulia then turned to Daisy, telling her she was up next and to do her best. Daisy, with a resolute expression, agreed. Daisy prepared herself, extending her hands as she began to cast her own wind blade. She thought to herself that she still hadn't managed to pull it off perfectly, but surely this time, she would succeed. She focused intently, a small gust of wind emanating from her hands as she aimed towards the distant wooden target. She listened as Dahlia observed that while magic resided within her body, it remained unreleased. Daisy, pouting, could only offer a frustrated, non-committal sound in response. Her older brother then reminded her that they had been practicing for almost 2 years already. Daisy, agitated, cried out, questioning why both he and Dahlia could use magic to help their father, but she could not. Despite her previous failures, Daisy declared with renewed determination that she would definitely succeed next time. Her brother, ever encouraging, assured her she would master it after a few more years of practice, though Daisy internally lamented that she still couldn't do it. Later that night, the quiet of a bedroom settled, the moon casting shadows over the familiar architecture of a grand house. As Daisy slept, she murmured softly, caught in a vivid dream. In it, her father sternly announced that they would appoint a tutor, while her mother stood silently by. A maid, called an ingrate, was then struck, her name cut short before it could be fully uttered. She awoke with a sharp gasp, her hand clenching the bedsheets. It was that dream again, the unsettling memory lingering in her mind. Trying to shake off the lingering unease, she told herself not to dwell on it and to go back to sleep, reminding herself that the baptism ceremony was fast approaching. In the kingdom of Zartenberg, it was obligatory for all citizens who turned 5 to be baptized. During this sacred ceremony, everyone would be bestowed a job by God, a divine assignment that would then be written into an official, tamper-proof certificate. It was common for these jobs to be inherited, and beyond providing employment, a good job also made one a desirable marriage candidate. Popular professions included swordsmen, magicians, or civil servants, each carrying its own prestige. Even if an individual possessed a rare skill, securing employment proved challenging unless it was paired with a suitable job. Furthermore, when a job was assigned, the rate of improvement for skills related to that job seemed to increase significantly. The Priestlaria family boasted a long and distinguished lineage of mages, with Daisy's father serving as the vice magician of the mage troops, and her mother possessing exceptional magical talent. Her older brother and sister, Yulia, had both received the esteemed job of magician at their own baptisms. Daisy, observing this legacy, declared her fervent desire to catch up to them as quickly as possible. As the day of the baptism arrived, the grand church stood ready, its imposing exterior and vast, ornate interior awaiting the ceremony. Entering the hallowed halls, Daisy, clutching her father's hand, gazed around with wide eyes. The sheer number of people and the immense scale of the church filled her with wonder. As they settled into a pew, she noticed many other children her age also present, all awaiting their turn. Turning to her father, she declared her resolve to practice diligently and make him proud. She eagerly anticipated receiving her job, so she could finally practice magic alongside her siblings. Her father, smiling gently, reassured her, expressing his certainty that she too would become a mage. Within a grand hall, a priest called out, "Daisy von Priestlaria." From among the seated students, a young girl with light hair, Daisy herself, responded with a clear yes. The priest then extended an invitation, instructing her to approach the podium. Daisy, with a slight hesitation, began to make her way forward. As she drew closer, the priest mused aloud about the Priestlarian name, noting that she was the daughter of the vice magician of the mage troops. Her small, delicate footsteps echoed softly as she continued her approach. Daisy finally reached the podium, where a glowing crystal orb rested. The priest instructed her to place her hand upon it, declaring that through this act, God would reveal her true vocation. As Daisy extended her hand towards the crystal, it began to hum and spin with increasing intensity, a soft, resonant sound filling the air. She watched the crystal intently as a certificate began to print from the device beneath it, the priest explaining that the result of her vocation would be inscribed upon it. Daisy's eyes widened in shock as she read the certificate, her expression betraying deep surprise. Noticing her reaction, the priest inquired, "What is the matter, my child?" The certificate clearly stated her vocation, alchemist. Visibly upset, Daisy quickly bowed and turned away, clutching the certificate tightly. When the priest asked what was wrong, she mumbled, nothing, before hurrying off as he called for the next participant. She walked away from the grand building, her small footsteps echoing softly on the stone path, still clutching the unexpected certificate. Alone, Daisy stared at the certificate, her mind racing with confusion and distress. She questioned the meaning of an alchemist, lamenting that this outcome was entirely unexpected. She vehemently denied the result, reminding herself that she was a mage's child, not an alchemist, declaring the situation a complete catastrophe. She was trapped in a recurring nightmare, a vivid memory of her family's harsh expectations. Her mother's voice echoed, demanding she strive to be a maid worthy of their name. Her father, equally stern, reminded her of the extensive tutoring she had received, while her brother scoffed, pointing out that even the Hensteinwood family produced mages. Another voice, perhaps Yulia's, expressed disbelief that their child would become a mere maid. Her father insisted she memorize every detail of a book, and Yulia questioned her inability to recall even simple facts. Amidst the pressure, Daisy's younger self thought, "It's those dreams again," as other voices cruelly declared they had finally shed useless weight, and expressed relief that someone had taken her away. Still reeling from the vocation ceremony, she clutched her chest, her face etched with despair. She whispered to herself, questioning what she should do, lamenting that she did not want to become deadweight, and expressing her profound disappointment at not becoming a mage. As Daisy fled, her older brother, observing her distress, instructed Yulia, whom he called Rose, to pursue her. He told Yulia to go after Daisy while he would wait at home. Yulia, in turn, called out to Daisy, urging her to wait. Moments later, Yulia discovered Daisy's vocation certificate lying on the ground. She picked it up, her brow furrowed in confusion, wondering why Daisy would drop such an important document and what could have possibly happened to cause such an oversight. As Yulia read the certificate, the word alchemist became clear. Meanwhile, outside the building, Daisy stood alone, her expression still heavy with dejection, as if the weight of her new vocation had settled upon her. Later, Daisy's older brother returned to the family estate, entering a quiet room within the grand house. He approached a maid, asking about Daisy's whereabouts. The maid informed him that Daisy had locked herself in her room shortly after their arrival. He then inquired if her vocation was alchemy, to which the maid confirmed with a simple yes. Pondering the unexpected outcome, he wondered what could have gone wrong. His thoughts drifted to the practicalities of vocations, noting that healers, for instance, were crucial and always needed in battle. He continued to reflect on the role of alchemists, realizing that most of them simply ran shops, selling low-level potions they created, and rarely had the luxury of being hired in the capital. He sat at the table, accepting a cup of tea from Yulia, and continued to ponder the nature of alchemy. He expressed doubt about the tales of a legendary elixir or philosopher's stone, which people claimed could grant immortality. Still, he resolved to support Daisy, no matter what path she chose. Meanwhile, Yulia observed him, thinking that Daisy must perceive her new vocation as a poor choice. Yulia then clarified her perspective, stating that Daisy's specific vocation as an alchemist was not necessarily a bad thing. He looked at her, puzzled, and asked what she meant. She explained that Daisy was remarkably hardworking and intelligent for her age, having already mastered reading, writing, and basic calculations. Furthermore, she possessed a deep, innate interest in plants. Yulia concluded that if Daisy embraced this path, she could lead a happy life. This revelation struck him, and he exclaimed that they should let her experience alchemy to see if it truly captured her interest. With a new resolve, he declared they should gather what was needed and begin immediately, his words echoing as the focus shifted to Daisy's closed door and the exterior of the grand house. Meanwhile, Daisy remained secluded in her room, curled up in distress. She lamented her fate, having always believed she would become a mage, just like her older brother and sister. As she lay in bed, drifting into a dream, her thoughts were consumed by a singular wish, that the three of them, herself, her brother, and her sister, could be of service to their father. Her eyes slowly fluttered open, and she began to stir, sitting up in her bed. A delicate potted plant sat on her bedside table, a silent witness to her awakening. She looked down at her hand, where a dark, ominous mark had begun to spread. A chilling realization dawned on her. She did not have much time left. Overwhelmed, she broke down, weeping as she reflected on what felt like a lonely life. She remembered a past life, one where she was born into a baronet family, yet was assigned the humble job of maid by divine will. Her proud and ambitious parents, fearing she would tarnish their family name, had wanted to disown her. Despite her noble birth, she was handed off to a strict tutor. Her parents declared that from then on, they would ensure she was tutored to become a maid who would not sully their family name, ensuring she retained some dignity. The rigorous training continued relentlessly. Her tutor, a stern woman, drilled an immense amount of information into her in a short time. Whenever she forgot something, the tutor would strike her, never allowing her the release of tears. Years passed under this harsh regime, but her suffering only deepened. After working as a maid for a few years, she contracted an incurable disease. When she turned 10, she was driven out of her home and sent away to work. Isolated in a crude, detached dwelling surrounding the mansion, she was quarantined. Her parents, of course, refused to take her back, and not a single person came to visit her. As her final moments approached, she lay in bed, covering her face, wishing she had been loved. Nobody came until the very end. With a soft sigh, she offered a quiet apology for not taking better care of herself, her gaze falling upon the spider lilies blooming outside her window as her past life faded away. Just as her past life faded, a new sensation overwhelmed her. She realized she had just died, but then a voice joyfully announced, "It is a girl. Your Excellency, your child has been born." A baby's cries filled the air. She found herself in the arms of a man, her new father, who smiled warmly as her new mother, recovering in bed, held another crying baby, her older brother. Her father remarked on what a beautiful girl she was. Her new older brother, a small boy himself, observed her with wide-eyed curiosity. He gently poked her cheek, realizing he had a new little sister. She found herself cradled in the arms of a man, her new father, as her older brother, still a baby himself, playfully poked her head. Her father gently admonished him to be careful with his new sister. Internally, she realized the impossible. She was a baby once more. Her father, still holding her, then turned to her older brother, now a young child, to discuss names. He pondered if they should proceed with Daisy, while her brother, with a child's lisp, asked what name they would choose for Rose. Her mother, now holding her, explained that they had decided girls would be named after flowers. Daisy, still a baby, heard them considering Dahlia or Daisy, realizing they were trying to decide her name. Her mother smiled warmly, her eyes filled with affection, while her father looked on with a gentle expression. Daisy, observing them, wondered if these kind individuals were truly her new parents. The narration shifted to an exterior view of a grand, stately house, as Daisy's internal thoughts echoed a profound question. Had she truly been reborn? A stylized depiction of Daisy as a baby illustrated the internal revelation. Originally, there were two distinct entities within the same body, but now, she had been reborn as Daisy Vaughn Priestlaria. As she grew within the Priestlaria household, she was showered with an abundance of love and happiness. Her older brother, now a playful child, delighted in lifting her high, while her mother often read to her, creating a nurturing environment. Even though her older brother and sister were very young themselves, they still took great care of her, playing with her and watching over her as she rested, ensuring her comfort and safety. This profound love, freely given by her new family, granted the final wish she had harbored in her previous life, bringing a serene and contented smile to her face as she grew older. Every day was filled with happiness, and she felt completely satisfied, like a well-tended garden blooming under constant, loving care. She held out a delicate flower, a gesture of pure, innocent affection. Her past self, an ethereal presence, observed the scene, recalling how the original Daisy, her little sister, had also loved her deeply. Yet, her past self knew the truth. Two minds inhabiting one body was an unnatural and unstable state. She gently ruffled the young girl's hair, a silent thank you for the brief, shared existence. As the ethereal figure watched Daisy play happily with her mother, a profound realization settled upon her. This body belonged to Daisy, and she mustn't take it over. She resolved to depart, taking with her the painful memories of her past life, but leaving behind any useful knowledge for Daisy. With a gentle gaze, the fading spirit offered a final flower to the young girl, a silent wish for her happiness. She knew Daisy deserved a life free from the burdens of another's past. Suddenly, the young girl cried out, reaching desperately for the fading figure. She tried to cling to her, calling out for her big sis, pleading for her not to leave, not to disappear. Embracing her tightly, the past self felt tears welling in her eyes. She wondered if Daisy would forget her once she was truly gone. A bittersweet thought as their connection severed. Still holding her hand, the fading spirit reassured Daisy. She told her not to worry about anything, for she had a beautiful family who would care for her. The fading spirit smiled, expressing her gratitude to the Priestlaria family for their kindness. She acknowledged Daisy's older brother and sister, and a cute, lovely Daisy herself, knowing they would bring her joy. As the last vestiges of her past self dissolved into a shower of petals, Daisy reached out, her heart aching. The departing spirit offered a final, silent thanks to fate for allowing her to leave her painful memories behind, cherishing the brief, happy days she had spent in the Priestlaria household. Then, with a gasp, Daisy awoke in her bed, her eyes wide with shock and a lingering sense of loss. She reached out into the empty air, a desperate cry of "Big Sis!" escaping her lips. She awoke with a start, tears streaming down her face, a profound sadness lingering from a dream she couldn't quite recall. Confused, she wondered why she was crying. As she sat up, a rumbling in her stomach reminded her it was already 7 in the morning, and she hadn't eaten since the previous night. Quietly, she slipped out of bed, her bare feet padding softly on the floor as she decided she needed to find some food first. She carefully opened her door, peeking out into the hallway. Upon entering the kitchen, she found her mother and Yulia already seated at the table. Her mother, noticing her presence, exclaimed her name with surprise and relief. Her mother immediately rose and enveloped her in a tight embrace, expressing how relieved she was that Daisy had finally shown her face. Daisy, surprised, could only utter "Mother." Her older brother then approached, gently patting her head and offering a book he thought she might like, asking if she wanted to read it later. Yulia, too, reminded her of a promise to help decorate her room with flowers. A maid, Ellie, confirmed that food was being brought out immediately. Daisy's mother, still concerned, instructed Ellie to prepare a soup or risotto, noting that Daisy must be famished. Soon, a warm meal was placed before her, and she ate with gusto, the sounds of her satisfied eating echoing softly in the quiet kitchen. As she ate, a troubling thought crossed her mind. Why would they treat an unwanted child so well? She wondered if this lavish meal was some kind of last supper. She sat at the table, startled by the sudden presence of her father, who embraced her warmly, patting her head. He expressed his joy, exclaiming that she had finally emerged. Daisy, still processing the overwhelming affection, could only utter his title in a questioning tone. Realizing she had been eating, her father quickly apologized for the interruption, then announced he had a special present for her. Daisy, her eyes wide with surprise, repeated the word, wondering what kind of gift he could possibly have. With a gentle gesture, he led her away, calling for her to follow him. She trailed behind him, her small figure moving quickly to keep pace. They arrived at an old and used building that had clearly undergone a thorough cleaning. Her father invited her to step inside, while Daisy looked at the structure with a puzzled expression, silently questioning its purpose. As she stepped through the doorway, Daisy gasped in wonder. The room before her was filled with an array of sparkling tools and bottles, catching the light and gleaming as if brand new. It was a sight that left her utterly awestruck. The space was clearly a workshop, with stacks of books neatly arranged on a table and shelves brimming with various shiny instruments and containers. Her father, beaming with pride, declared the room a gift for their future alchemist. He then presented her with a large, heavy book, stating it was another part of her present. Daisy, still processing the revelation, looked at the book with a mix of surprise and confusion. She opened the book, its cover emblazoned with the word alchemy. As she flipped through the pages, her eyes scanned terms like filtration, distillation, and potion, her expression growing thoughtful as she absorbed the unfamiliar concepts. A wave of profound sadness washed over her, and she began to cry softly. She wondered internally if this was a subtle way of being cast out, a consequence of her inability to become a mage, questioning if she was truly unwanted. Her father, sensing her distress, knelt down beside her and gently patted her head. He reassured her, telling her not to worry, that they would never cast her out. He explained that God had bestowed alchemy upon her because it was the perfect path for her. She clutched the alchemy book, her eyes welling with tears, as her father gently placed a hand on her head, reassuring her that she was not unwanted and was, in fact, very important to their family. He then offered her a handkerchief, urging her to wipe away her tears. As she considered his words, a realization dawned on her. She had simply misunderstood, and she was not an unwanted child after all. A young girl stood by a window, humming softly to herself as she gazed out at the world beyond. The gentle melody filled the quiet room, a stark contrast to the serious endeavors that awaited her. With a determined expression, she declared her readiness to begin her studies, placing a heavy tome titled Alchemy onto the table. She pondered where the best place to start would be, her fingers tracing the cover before she began to flip through its pages. As she delved into the first chapter, she discovered that even something as fundamental as water possessed numerous different types. The revelation piqued her curiosity, prompting her to question the implications of such a basic element having so many variations. She continued to read, learning that water which appeared transparent and clean could still harbor microscopic bacteria and other harmful substances, rendering it unsafe for use despite its seemingly pure qualities. A new understanding dawned upon her, and she realized the necessity of personally examining the various types of water mentioned in her studies. She closed the book, a plan forming in her mind. Driven by her newfound curiosity, she made her way outside, her footsteps light as she approached the estate's well, eager to conduct her own observations. Reaching the well, she carefully lowered a bucket and drew up a sample. Upon inspection, she noted that while the water appeared normal, it contained bacteria and small insects, confirming the book's warnings. She then proceeded to the kitchen, the reality of the well water's impurities sinking in. She expressed her surprise, realizing that even water that looked clean could still harbor unseen life. Turning to Kate, she inquired if the well water was safe to drink directly. Kate, ever diligent, explained that it was not, emphasizing the necessity of boiling it first to prevent an upset stomach. She then asked if there was any water already prepared. Kate confirmed that there was, and with a gentle gesture, she poured a glass of water that had already been boiled and cooled, offering it to the young girl. She carefully examined the water from the kitchen, confirming its quality as normal and drinkable, free of bacteria. A sense of relief washed over her. After receiving the boiled water from Kate, she expressed her gratitude before eagerly drinking it down. Her research continued, leading her to a nearby pond where she assessed its water. As expected, the pond water was of low quality, containing dirt, bacteria, and various insects, making it entirely unsuitable for drinking. Back inside, she consulted her books, learning that even boiling dirty rainwater, which contained atmospheric pollutants, would only elevate its quality to a normal level, not the purity required for alchemy. She continued to pore over her texts, realizing that to use water in alchemy, she would need distilled water. This meant she would require a distiller, and she resolved to head to the lab to find one. Meanwhile, from a window, her older brother observed her with a knowing smile, remarking on her great interest in alchemy. Yulia, standing nearby, agreed, noting that Daisy was clearly busy investigating. He continued to watch as she crawled determinedly across the grounds, eager to witness her continued growth and discoveries. Inside the lab, she diligently searched through shelves and cabinets, muttering about needing a distiller. Finally, her eyes lit up as she spotted what she was looking for. With a triumphant flourish, she announced that the distiller was ready for use, having successfully arranged it according to the diagram. She then considered retrieving water from the well for the distillation process, but quickly realized she shouldn't start a fire by herself. Deciding it was best to seek assistance, she resolved to call Kate. Having successfully assembled the distiller, Daisy prepared to ignite the magic device, declaring herself ready to proceed. Kate stood nearby, observing her efforts. As the flame took hold, the device began its work, and soon, a steady stream of pure, distilled water began to drip into the collection flask, bubbling gently as it processed. Moments later, Daisy celebrated her triumph, exclaiming that she had successfully produced good quality water, marking her first experiment as a resounding success. Kate applauded her achievement. Daisy then consulted a book, realizing that healing magic could serve as an alternative to traditional medicine, and her next endeavor would be to create a potion. She continued to read from the book, noting the ingredients required for a potion: healing grass, magic grass, and water. She realized she could utilize her newly distilled water for this purpose. Turning to Kate, she called out, requesting her to retrieve the necessary grasses from the cellar. With Kate's assistance, all the necessary ingredients were swiftly gathered: magic grass and healing grass, both of normal quality. Daisy confirmed that everything was now ready. Daisy then pondered the preparation, deciding it would be best to tear the grasses slightly before adding them, as she believed they wouldn't mix well otherwise. Consulting her book, she read that she needed to wash and dry the healing and magic grasses, then extract them at a 2-to-1 ratio with water. She wondered aloud if stirring would be the next step. Following her decision, she proceeded to mix the ingredients in a beaker, carefully stirring the healing and magic grasses with the distilled water. However, the resulting mixture was a disappointment. Kate observed the beaker, which contained a failed potion of very low quality, with most of the active ingredients unextracted and no discernible effect. She questioned what had gone wrong. Daisy, looking distressed, pondered the failure, unable to understand why it had happened, as she felt she hadn't strayed far from the book's instructions. She quickly tried to reassure Kate, dismissing the setback as nothing to worry about. Kate acknowledged Daisy's words, offering her unwavering support and inviting her to call upon her for help with any future experiments. Daisy, still thoughtful, then declared that today's experiment was concluded. After her initial setback, she resolved to return to her studies, declaring it was time to reread the crucial book on alchemy. She stretched, a soft groan escaping her lips, acknowledging the sheer exhaustion that came with such intense study. Her eyes grew heavy, threatening to close as she struggled with the dense, difficult terminology, making even a single volume a challenge to comprehend. Suddenly, a realization dawned on her as she found the exact section where her understanding had faltered, a critical detail she had previously overlooked. She understood now that potion making was not merely about mixing ingredients. It involved a precise process of selectively separating components from raw materials. The book detailed the extraction process. First, breaking down ingredients into a powder, which usually yielded the best results, and then performing the extraction by combining them with water, heating the mixture, and stirring it thoroughly. A bright spark of understanding ignited within her. This crucial step must have been the missing piece in her previous attempt. She resolved to incorporate this new knowledge into tomorrow's experiment. The next day, Kate arrived at the house, announcing her return and confirming she had acquired the mixing bowls Daisy had requested. Kate offered to take charge of finely chopping the ingredients, acknowledging the potential danger involved. Daisy, grateful and eager, thanked her and declared it was time to begin their experiment. Together, they began the new experiment, Daisy diligently crushing ingredients while Kate meticulously chopped others, both focused on their tasks. She carefully observed the finely chopped ingredients, marveling at the precision. She then mimicked the chopping motion with a small knife, practicing the technique. As she continued to practice, Kate approached, offering a book and stating she would leave it for her when she was ready. Daisy, with a slight frown, acknowledged her noble upbringing meant she lacked such practical knowledge. With the ingredients prepared, Daisy declared she would use the ground ones first. She then enthusiastically poured the finely ground material into a beaker, ready to begin the next step. She carefully added the ground ingredients to the liquid in the beaker, ensuring the mixture was correct. Then, with a determined expression, she ignited a small flame beneath the beaker, vowing to properly heat the concoction this time. As the mixture began to heat, she stirred it gently, contemplating whether it was time to assess its progress. She continued to stir, maintaining a steady rhythm. She took a small taste of the concoction, finding it bitter, yet she adamantly declared it was not a failure. She mused that further heating might improve it, though the potion's current state indicated a normal quality with poorly extracted active ingredients, resulting in its slight bitterness. She recalled the common belief that bitter medicine was often the most effective, but she found the current level of bitterness excessive. Observing the results of further heating, she noted that while the active ingredients were now properly extracted, the potion had become very bitter. Even with slight extraction, it remained bitter, leading her to question if increased extraction inherently led to increased bitterness. As the potion began to bubble vigorously, she realized that excessive heat was detrimental, causing it to lose quality. The active ingredients were slightly destroyed, and the potion remained slightly bitter, confirming her suspicion that overheating was counterproductive. With renewed determination, she decided to try a different approach. She slid a glass containing finely cut ingredients into position and then carefully lit a new flame beneath a separate beaker, preparing for her next attempt. She continued her diligent work at the alchemy table, surrounded by her various tools and her open book, deeply engrossed in the ongoing experiment. She examined her latest creation, a potion labeled as normal quality with properly extracted active ingredients. Despite her efforts, she noted it was still definitely bitter. She decided to halt the heating process, observing the bubbling liquid, reasoning that since the instructions hadn't mentioned very bitter, this attempt must be an improvement. After stopping the heat, she carefully placed a cork into the flask with a soft squeak. Then, she meticulously filtered the liquid through a cloth before sealing it securely in a bottle, which closed with a distinct clink. With a triumphant declaration, she announced that the potion was finally done, even though its bitterness persisted. Unaware of the successful, albeit bitter, experiment, Kate remained fast asleep in the background. Moments later, she called out to Kate, who jolted awake with a surprised gasp. Kate quickly composed herself, asking her young mistress what she needed. Kate, now fully attentive, inquired how Daisy knew the potion was bitter and if she had already consumed it. Daisy clarified that she had made a normal quality potion, but it was still bitter, and pondered if such a potion should even be drunk. Kate, visibly startled by Daisy's revelation, exclaimed her mistress's name. Daisy, however, simply announced that this marked the conclusion of today's experiment, turning away with a satisfied sigh. As she walked away, She considered that she should present the potion to her parents, but she still hadn't revealed her appraisal skill to anyone. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the grand estate, highlighting the quiet elegance of the family home. Later, Daisy sat at a large desk, presenting her potion to her older brother and Yulia. She explained that the potion's quality was normal, but it tasted bitter. Her brother, holding the small bottle, leaned forward, asking what her secret was. Her brother, looking thoughtful, stated that it would normally be impossible for a 5-year-old to make a potion without a teacher. Yulia, surprised, questioned if a child so young could truly create a potion by themselves. She denied having tasted the potion, prompting her older brother to ask how she had discerned its quality. Yulia, equally perplexed, pressed her further on how she had figured it out without tasting it. She then revealed her appraisal skill, explaining that she first discovered it while caring for flowers, using it to identify which ones were dying. She admitted to keeping a secret, fearing others might hate her if they knew she could appraise people. Feeling a wave of relief, she offered to appraise her brother. He, with a reassuring smile, told her not to worry, promising they would not hate her for possessing such a skill. She focused her skill, and a detailed appraisal of her father, Henry von Priestleria, appeared, listing his title, strength, magic, occupation, and various skills. Her brother proudly declared their father to be very powerful. He was utterly amazed by the depth of the information, murmuring his astonishment. She confirmed that the appraisal had indeed revealed all those details. He further commented on the incredibly detailed nature of the assessment. Yulia added that it even showed attributes, such as magic resistance, that she had never known about before. Yulia, observing the exchange, suggested that Daisy, being both smart and possessing an appraisal skill, could easily secure a job in the alchemy division. She emphasized that such a rare skill would make her quite popular. Her brother agreed, noting that the number of appraisal skill holders in their country could be counted on one hand, and gently patted Daisy's head. She agreed that such a unique skill would undoubtedly attract undesirable individuals. Her brother then advised that it would be best not to reveal this skill to everyone, suggesting they should only confide in those they truly trusted. He then offered further encouragement, assuring Daisy that she would become an alchemist in no time and should take pride in her abilities. Daisy listened intently, her expression thoughtful. Yulia, with a serious expression, advised Daisy to use the incredible skill God had bestowed upon her with utmost care. Daisy looked up, a hint of surprise on her face. A maid burst through the door, apologizing profusely for the intrusion and announcing the arrival of Master Remus. Sir Henry, surprised by the sudden commotion, inquired about the cause of the panic. The maid explained that Remus had been practicing his magic on a target, and during his training, some fragments broke off and struck him. Remus stood nearby, his arm bandaged, looking somewhat abashed. Sir Henry, now seated, sternly reminded Remus that he had explicitly told him not to train by himself. The maid stood behind Remus, her expression still etched with worry. He maintained his stern expression, stating that while he understood Remus's desire, the rules must be followed. Remus apologized, admitting he only wanted to improve his magic quickly. Daisy, now present, offered a potion to Remus, who gratefully accepted it. Sir Henry then suggested they tried Daisy's potion on the injury. Sir Henry applied the potion to Remus's injured arm, noting that even if it wasn't ingested, applying it directly to the affected area should still be effective. The liquid gushed from the bottle onto the wound. Remus exclaimed in utter astonishment as his arm instantly healed. There was no scar, and the pain had completely vanished. The maid praised Daisy for her excellent work. Sir Henry confirmed that the potion had worked perfectly, wiping away the last traces of the liquid from Remus's now unblemished arm. Daisy beamed with pride. Sir Henry confirmed that it was indeed Daisy's very first potion. Remus, still holding the empty bottle, looked at it with wide eyes and asked if it was truly Daisy's creation. Daisy blushed and giggled softly. Remus, still amazed, exclaimed that he couldn't even use basic healing magic yet, and being able to heal wounds like that was truly incredible. He recoiled, his face contorted in disgust as the potion's bitter taste assaulted his senses. "Ugh, it's bitter," he exclaimed, a single drop clinging to his lip. Moments later, surrounded by a small group of academy students, he continued to complain, declaring that Daisy's potion was far too bitter and that he would refuse to drink it if he ever fell ill again. One of the students, a young man in a uniform, chuckled, remarking on Remus's immediate demands. He, still reeling from the taste, then loudly called for Kate, demanding water to wash away the lingering bitterness. Meanwhile, Daisy, unaware of her brother's complaints, felt a surge of pride, thinking to herself that this truly felt like her first real job. Kate, having attended to Remus, approached her, reminding her about the payment for today's potion. Daisy's eyes widened in surprise as Kate presented her with a small pile of coins, far more than she had anticipated. Her brother, having recovered from the potion's taste, then encouraged her, proclaiming that was the spirit and that he eagerly awaited her next creation. Daisy, now officially recognized as part of the alchemy division, with a strength of 8/10, magic of 140/150, alchemy skill at 2/10, and appraisal skill at 4/10, clenched her fists in determination. She resolved to keep studying and do her absolute best. A man, assessing a plot of land, remarked that it was an excellent spot for a field abundant with sunlight. He then drove his shovel firmly into the earth. Suddenly, Daisy exclaimed, asking him to teach her the process for future projects. He, with a kind smile, offered to handle the rest of the work himself. Beaming with enthusiasm, she declared her ambition to become a great alchemist and open an atelier in the royal city someday. He praised her excellent attitude, to which she simply affirmed. Holding a hoe, he promised to teach her everything he could, urging her to do her absolute best. With the task left to her, she gripped the hoe firmly, confirming her commitment to do her best. Later, he surveyed the newly prepared field, deeming it just right. Meanwhile, Daisy, utterly exhausted, rested on a nearby bench as he continued his work, hammering his stake into the ground. He then congratulated Daisy on her excellent work, announcing that the field was now completed. She, utterly spent, lay sprawled on the bench, barely able to respond. He admitted that the heavy labor and gardening were tough, but expressed immense satisfaction with the great field they had managed to create. She sat on the ground, looking utterly worn out from the effort. Moments later, she excitedly pointed something out in a book to him, prompting him to ask what she intended to plant in their new field. She, in turn, pondered a new idea. Standing in the middle of the wide, newly prepared field, she spread her arms wide, exclaiming her amazement at its vastness. The clear sky stretched overhead, dotted with soft clouds. Below, the vast, open land unfolded, bordered by distant mountains and lush greenery. She considered the task ahead, noting that for replanting in a different field, fresh seedlings were always best. Dan, meanwhile, mused that it would be nice to have all these plants growing in his own backyard. As they continued their work, she realized just how slow the entire process of setting up her shop was proving to be. Her attention was then drawn to a particular plant, one she had never seen before, which she immediately recognized as a potentially great ingredient for future alchemy. A detailed examination revealed it to be eternal grass, a plant of good quality, containing an incredible amount of nutrition in both its leaves and roots, making it very healthy. Pointing to the plant, she informed Dan that it looked highly nutritious and expressed her desire to take it back with her. He responded, asking what the matter was. Dan then explained that not only was this plant abundant with nutrients, but it also possessed many different uses. He identified it as high-quality eternal grass. With a gentle tug, he pulled the plant from the earth, its roots still clinging to the soil. He then asked if this amount would be enough for her, confidently stating that it should probably suffice. Satisfied with their harvest, she adjusted her backpack, and he suggested they head over to the stream she had wanted to see. Upon arriving at the stream, she exclaimed at the beauty of the place, while Dan remarked that they would likely find plenty of good quality, medicinal herbs growing there. She marveled at the sheer abundance of herbs surrounding them, a verdant tapestry stretching across the landscape. Her small feet tapped lightly as she moved, eager to explore the rich bounty. As she continued her search, Dan observed that the area seemed to hold everything they could possibly need. Suddenly, Daisy noticed something peculiar, and Dan, too, turned his attention to the same spot, a look of concern beginning to form on his face. Moments later, as she skipped ahead, eager to see what lay beyond, Dan's voice cut through the air with an urgent warning. He lunged forward, his bucket clattering to the ground, desperately trying to reach her as a hidden threat emerged. The attack came swiftly, a powerful blow that Dan managed to deflect, shielding Daisy with his body. The force of the impact sent them both stumbling backward, and he grimly acknowledged their sudden misfortune. The assailant revealed itself to be a hateful rabbit, a magical beast known for its formidable front teeth and dangerous kicks from its powerful hind legs. It snarled, its sharp fangs glinting menacingly. Dan, despite a fresh wound on his arm, dismissed his injury, instructing Daisy to get behind him and stay safe. She, however, noticed the blood dripping from his arm, her concern growing. Suddenly, more hateful rabbits emerged from the undergrowth, launching a coordinated assault. Dan struggled to fend them off, grunting with effort as they overwhelmed him, their powerful kicks and bites landing repeatedly. Watching Dan being overwhelmed, she panicked, wondering what she could possibly do. She realized with dismay that she had no weapon, while Dan, pinned down, cursed the raw strength of the magical beast. A desperate resolve hardened her expression. She decided she would have to try to cast a spell immediately, even though she had previously been unable to perform any magic. As a hateful rabbit lunged, its jaws snapping towards Dan's arm, Daisy braced herself, summoning all her will. She cried out, attempting to invoke a wind blade spell, hoping to manifest magic in their moment of dire need. She desperately tried to activate her magic, her thoughts racing with urgency as Dan remained in peril. The hateful rabbit, however, began to turn its menacing gaze directly towards her, intensifying her plea for the spell to work. Suddenly, a powerful gust of wind erupted from her, manifesting as a wind blade that sliced through the hateful rabbit with a sharp, cutting sound, leaving it stunned and vulnerable. Seizing the moment, Dan lunged forward, his movements swift and decisive. He plunged his knife into the stunned beast, finishing it off with a final, brutal blow. With the danger past, he exhaled in relief, thanking her for saving him and asking if she had sustained any injuries. She, exhausted but relieved, confirmed their success and that she was unharmed. Remembering his injury, she quickly produced a potion, urging him to use it. She reiterated that she was fine, her concern focused entirely on his well-being. He took the potion and immediately applied it to his injured arm, the liquid splashing onto his skin. Moments later, he marveled at the potion's efficacy, exclaiming how wonderfully effective it was as his injury visibly healed. He continued to praise her, noting her young age of only 5 years and her wonderful talent for magic, especially the wind magic that had so effectively sliced the hateful rabbit. She blushed at his compliments. With the immediate tasks resolved, he suggested they resume gathering the materials they had originally sought. She readily agreed, and he gently patted her head before they set off. They then continued their peaceful task, gathering herbs in the forest, the recent danger now a distant memory as a sense of calm returned. She carefully examined the gathered plants, noting their classifications as magician's herb and medicinal herb. Both were of good quality, the former growing by absorbing elemental magic, and the latter effective for healing wounds when mashed. She felt a surge of satisfaction, believing these would be more than enough for her needs. Later, a lavish meal was prepared, featuring a large, succulent steak, steaming soup, and rice. The grand estate stood majestically in the background, surrounded by lush forests and distant mountains under a clear sky. At the dining table, Daisy, her older brother, and her father enjoyed the meal. Daisy, eyes sparkling with delight, exclaimed that it was the first time she had seen such a large steak, finding it utterly delicious. Her older brother, surprised by the grand feast, inquired if there was a special occasion. Her older brother, still processing the news, asked Daisy if she could now use wind magic. Her father then recounted the events of that day, explaining that while collecting materials with Dan, they were attacked by a hateful rabbit, and Daisy had saved Dan using wind magic. He continued, expressing his amazement that Daisy had used magic without any prior experience, noting its potential usefulness in situations like fires. Daisy, however, admitted she barely remembered the incident, attributing her actions to desperation. As the meal progressed, Daisy turned to her father, stating she needed to discuss something important with him. He inquired about the matter, and she revealed her desire to study and undergo magic training, just like her older brother and sister. Her father hesitated, reminding her that she was still only 5 years old and that there was no need to rush such things. Daisy countered, arguing that if she were to leave the house regularly, it would be prudent for her to learn some form of self-defense. He paused, considering her point, and conceded that she had a valid argument. He agreed that it would indeed be beneficial for her to learn as soon as possible, especially if she intended to collect materials herself in the future. With a decisive nod, her father granted Daisy permission to participate in lessons, instructing Rose to contact Yulia the following day to arrange it. Daisy, overwhelmed with joy, cheered excitedly at the news. Her current status showed her as the second daughter of the Viscount, with skills in alchemy, appraisal, and newly acquired wind magic. In the tranquil garden behind the house, Daisy observed the thriving healing grass and magic grass, noting the successful transplantation of mage herbs, eternal grass, and medicinal herbs collected the previous week. Everything appeared healthy and robust. She envisioned a future where these plants, once fully grown and nurtured, would yield high-quality ingredients and an abundance of precious seeds for collection. With a sudden burst of energy, Daisy declared her intention to excel in her magic lessons. She then checked her pocket watch, realizing it was indeed time to begin her studies. Moments later, Daisy arrived at the training grounds, where Yulia, Dahlia, Daisy's older brother, and 2 other students were already gathered, awaiting the start of the day's instruction. As she approached, Daisy respectfully greeted Yuria, stating her readiness to be under her care. Her older brother echoed the sentiment, offering his own morning salutation to Yuria-sensei. Yuria, identified as Yuria von Astra, a former royal court mage and the family's magic teacher, returned their greetings. She then instructed Remus and Dahlia to review the previous day's lessons before turning her attention to Daisy, informing her that she was officially joining the lessons today. Daisy confirmed her permission for magic training at this time, while her older brother, Remus, was already engaged in practicing alchemy, a small flame flickering from his hand. Yuria smiled warmly, expressing her delight that the ongoing training would undoubtedly aid their alchemy pursuits, attributing this dedication to Henry-sama's well-known passion for education. She then explained to Daisy that her initial focus would be on teaching proper magic management. Daisy, however, seemed surprised, questioning how magic lessons could possibly assist her with alchemy. Yuria clarified that many aspects of item training, such as creating mana or healing potions, require the use of magic power. She emphasized that once Daisy could control her magic, her capabilities in alchemy would significantly expand, a revelation that Daisy received with a sound of understanding. She recalled a sensation from a previous magic use, wondering if it had originated in her stomach. Yulia's voice then directed her to focus on the area around her belly button, indicating that was where she should feel it. Daisy listened intently as Yulia elaborated on the nature of magic, explaining that the amount of movement was up to her conscience, and that magic power started from just under the belly button, flowing through the whole body, distinct from blood. Yulia then challenged her to actively spin the magic power within her. With a newfound resolve, she confirmed her understanding of the task, ready to attempt spinning the magic power as instructed. She declared her readiness, eager to begin. As she focused, eyes closed in concentration, a subtle, swirling energy began to emanate from her, indicating the initial stirrings of her magic. Suddenly, Her eyes flew open, startled by the sensation, as Yulia, witnessing the powerful magical surge, expressed her utter amazement. Yulia, recovering from her surprise, remarked on the sheer intensity of Daisy's effort, noting how much spirit she poured into it. Daisy, however, was completely drained, unable to move, declaring her exhaustion. Despite her exhaustion, a small, glowing orb of magic flickered in her hand. Yulia, observing her, concluded that the immediate priority was to familiarize Daisy with the fundamental sensation of manipulating magic. She then offered to provide a magical boost to help Daisy initiate the process, instructing her to remember the specific sensation she felt when she previously cast Windblade. As Yulia gently touched her stomach, Daisy gasped, feeling an intense, whirring sensation within. Moments later, she excitedly declared that she could distinctly feel her magic power circulating internally. Daisy, now invigorated, confirmed her understanding. Yulia, reinforcing the lesson, cautioned her to remember the sensation, as the next stage of training involved learning to actively manipulate the magic. She then inquired if Daisy truly grasped the feeling. She, observing a training session, watched as a young man and woman, along with Daisy's older brother, practice their magic. The young woman, Daisy's past self, extended her hand, conjuring a shimmering wind blade. As the wind blade shot forward, tearing through the air with a sharp hiss, Yulia's expression turned serious. The blade struck a distant target, causing a small explosion of smoke and debris, and she realized the forest was in danger. Moments later, the young woman, Daisy's past self, knelt on the ground, panting heavily, her energy visibly drained. In the distance, a plume of smoke rose from the forest, a testament to the power she had just unleashed. Despite her exhaustion, the young woman declared that she could now properly shoot a wind blade. Yulia, standing nearby, smiled, remarking that she had improved significantly. The young woman, Daisy's past self, beamed, expressing her gratitude. Suddenly, the young woman felt her focus blurring, her vision swaying. The ground beneath her seemed to tilt, and the world around her began to spin. The scene shifted abruptly, revealing the exterior of a grand house, while in the distance, Yulia, Daisy's past self, and her older brother were still visible, seemingly caught in the fading memory. Back in the present, Yulia sat beside the sleeping Daisy, gently observing her. Daisy stirred, letting out a soft murmur as she began to awaken. Yulia watched as Daisy suddenly jolted awake, her eyes wide with surprise and confusion. Yulia then explained that Daisy had used up all her magic power on a wind blade and had passed out on the spot. Daisy, still disoriented, wondered aloud what she was doing there. Yulia held up a status screen, revealing Daisy's current magical statistics. Daisy, seeing the information, finally understood what had happened, but then reacted with a surprised exclamation at the details. She pondered the implications of her recent experience, wondering if her maximum magic power limit increased each time she completely exhausted it. She recalled that just this morning, her maximum capacity had been 180. Turning to Yulia, she hesitantly called out, asking for her thoughts. Yulia, however, remained silent, simply staring back at her, prompting Daisy to repeat her question. Meanwhile, Daisy's father considered the intriguing hypothesis, raising one's maximum magic level by exhausting it. He mused that it couldn't hurt to test such a theory just once. Off-panel, Daisy reacted with a gasp, questioning if such a thing could truly be possible. He then gathered the children, declaring that today they would all use their magic until every last bit was exhausted before going to sleep. Daisy, Yulia, and her older brother enthusiastically agreed, then proceeded to practice their magic, depleting their reserves to 0. The next day, the results of their rigorous training were evident. Her older brother had gained 3 points to his magic power, Yulia had gained 2, and Daisy herself also saw an increase of 2 points. Her father praised Daisy, acknowledging her discovery as a huge breakthrough. He admitted he had no idea that maximum magic power could be raised so quickly, in just one morning or evening. Daisy, feeling a new sense of accomplishment, realized she might now be able to create the mana potion that Yulia's sensei had mentioned. Her father, pleased with the results, declared that from now on, they would all exhaust their magic power before sleep. She readily agreed. With renewed determination, she decided to make a mana potion, focusing on manipulating magic into her arm. Yulia watched her, ready to assist. To begin, she gathered the necessary ingredients, fresh mage herbs and magic grass, which she carefully placed into some water. She then proudly presented a shimmering magic crystal, explaining that her father had given it to her to use for the potion. The crystal was classified as a high-quality gem, acquired from the body of a monster, small but containing a good amount of magic power. She consulted her book, realizing that this time, in addition to merely extracting magic, she would need to mix it into a potion, using the magic crystal itself as a catalyst. With a determined expression, she began stirring the contents of a beaker over a flame. With intense focus, she channeled the magic she had learned to manipulate, flowing it through her arms and into the concoction, her brow furrowed in concentration. Suddenly, the magic crystal within the beaker reacted violently, cracking with a sharp sound and emitting a burst of energy. A powerful explosion erupted from the beaker, sending a shockwave through the room and startling her, causing her to cry out in surprise. "Kate, who had been observing, also reacted with alarm. The force of the blast knocked her to the floor, leaving her stunned. Kate, recovering quickly, observed the smoking beaker and concluded that the magic crystal had been infused with too much magic, causing the dangerous reaction. She asked if Daisy was unharmed. Daisy admitted she had no idea such a thing could happen. Kate then explained that applying magic from the outside of a crystal causes it to repel the energy, leading to an explosive reaction. She sternly advised Daisy to be more careful next time, emphasizing the potential for injury. Daisy, still a little shaken, agreed to be more careful. Kate gently patted her head, reiterating the need to watch out for explosions. A new understanding dawned on Daisy. Instead of pushing magic into the crystal from the outside, she needed to draw the magic out from within it. With this newfound insight, she tried again, focusing her will on the magic power residing within the crystal itself. This time, the magic began to seep out gently, forming small, ethereal wisps around the crystal as it dissolved into the liquid. As the magic continued to seep, the liquid in the beaker began to swirl and mix, transforming into a new substance. A small puff of vapor indicated the successful completion of the alchemical process. She then carefully transferred the newly created potion into a small flask. Holding it aloft with a triumphant grin, she proudly declared that she had successfully crafted a high-quality mana potion, one that was exceptionally effective for recovering magic power, 1.5 times more potent than a normal mana potion. Kate watched her with a pleased smile. She beamed with pride, thinking her father would be immensely happy to see what she had created. For her first attempt, achieving 1.5 times the efficiency of an ordinary potion was truly remarkable, especially with good ingredients, making high-quality products possible. Meanwhile, across the estate, her father approached the building, pushing open its door with a soft click. As he entered, he greeted her, mentioning that Kate had informed him of her completed new product. She looked up, surprised to see him. He watched as she proudly presented a small, glowing vial, declaring it a high-quality mana potion, 1.5 times as effective as an ordinary one. His eyes widened in astonishment. Examining the potion, he realized its exceptional efficiency would make it highly sought after, noting that even mages from the mage division might struggle to create something so potent. He then considered their current inventory, which consisted only of normal mana potions. She quickly grasped the implications, realizing that such potent potions would mean people wouldn't need to carry as many. He affirmed her thought, adding that it would also decrease the amount one had to drink. He continued to commend her, stating that at this rate, she would soon become a fine alchemist, and expressed his immense pride in her ability to create and complete such a product at only 5 years old. He then carefully placed the potion among others. She, in turn, promised to do her very best. Then, a more practical question arose. He wondered if she would be able to produce these high-quality potions on a regular basis. She looked thoughtful, considering the implications. She considered his query, explaining that she would need to collect ingredients from her field each time, but believed she could manage it once a week. Hearing this, he declared his decision to negotiate the sale of these potions the following day. She gasped in surprise, while he seemed to understand her limitations. The following day, a stark contrast to their earlier excitement unfolded as her father returned home, his shoulders slumped in utter dejection. Her mother, noticing his dispirited state, immediately asked what troubled him. He explained the difficult negotiations with the Minister of War regarding the mana potions. He revealed that the knights had already heard about the potions, but the mage division insisted on only accepting products made by their own members, making the situation unfair. His explanation continued, detailing the difficulty of getting their high-quality potions purchased by the government under the current circumstances. Unbeknownst to him, Daisy listened intently from just outside the door, her expression thoughtful. Suddenly, Daisy burst into the room, proudly presenting a potion and declaring that she had created potions with 1.5 times the quality of a normal one. Her father, initially surprised, then clarified that the issue wasn't the lack of high-quality potions, but rather the existence of other high-quality potions already on the market. He immediately seized her hands, his face lighting up with renewed hope. He exclaimed that this was precisely what they needed, a breakthrough that could change everything. With renewed hope, he inquired if she could produce these exceptional potions once a week. She confidently affirmed her ability to do so. Encouraged, he declared his intention to try negotiating with the Ministry of War one more time the following day. Despite his optimism, questions lingered about the strategy. He pondered whether simply stating a desire for a potion would be enough to convince them, while Daisy's older brother wondered if such a direct approach would truly work. It was then that Yulia offered a crucial suggestion. If they wouldn't believe the story, they should take Daisy with them. Daisy's older brother agreed, acknowledging that no one would believe such a ridiculous claim without direct proof. Her father considered the idea thoughtfully. She eagerly agreed to accompany them. Yulia further emphasized that having the producer herself present would significantly enhance their persuasive power. Her father, convinced, asked Daisy if she truly wished to come. And thus, the next day, Daisy embarked on her first journey to the royal castle. Kate, a maid, held up a new dress for Daisy, who looked at it with wide-eyed excitement. The garment, a light-toned, ruffled dress, seemed perfectly suited for a special occasion. As Kate helped her into the dress, Daisy turned to admire her reflection in the mirror, a look of pure delight spreading across her face as the soft fabric settled around her. She beamed at Kate, expressing her gratitude. Kate, with a gentle smile, assured her that she was now perfectly adorned. With her new attire, Daisy felt a surge of determination, resolving to do her utmost to assist her father. She carefully packed her bag, ensuring her samples were ready for whatever lay ahead. Soon after, Daisy found herself inside a carriage, accompanied by her older brother. The vehicle rattled along, its wheels churning over the ground, carrying them towards their destination. The carriage eventually delivered them to a towering, ornate building, its grand architecture reaching towards the sky, hinting at its importance. Her brother gestured for her to follow, leading the way. Daisy, looking up at the immense structure, gasped, remarking on its truly colossal scale now that she stood before it. They stepped inside, entering a spacious hall where a uniformed man stood waiting, his presence suggesting he was expecting them. The man greeted Daisy's brother, recognizing him as the former vice-magician of the mage troops, and directed them further into the building. Following the directions, they entered a large room where several men were already seated around a long table, engaged in a meeting. Daisy's brother offered a polite apology for their intrusion. He stood before a group of stern-faced men, one with a long ponytail and another bald with a beard, as Daisy, feeling a gulp of apprehension, wondered if these serious individuals were soldiers. Their demeanor suggested a gravity that made her nervous. As the officials questioned Daisy's presence, asking who the little girl was, her brother stepped forward. He introduced her as his daughter, Daisy, the very creator of the potions in question, explaining that he thought it best for the potion maker herself to give the presentation. One official, the finance minister, expressed surprise, remarking that they had been waiting for Henry, while another, a younger man, questioned if this was a joke from the former vice-magician. He then gestured towards a seat, inviting Daisy to sit. However, the finance minister, still standing, declared there was no need for him to sit, maintaining a formal stance. Daisy, now seated, politely inquired if she could begin the presentation. The finance minister, observing her, chuckled softly and agreed, noting that she seemed like a very mature lady in their presence. She began her presentation, explaining that she had brought mana potions in addition to regular potions and high potions, having heard from her father yesterday that the Knight Order was in need of high-quality potions. As she spoke, she carefully rolled several vials onto the table. The officials murmured amongst themselves as Daisy continued, emphasizing that each of these potions possessed 1.5 times the potency of a normal potion. Daisy, slightly startled by the attention, affirmed her statement. The finance minister then interjected, stating he had heard enough and asked if it was permissible to appraise them now. He then called out to another official, Heinrich, to proceed. The finance minister then turned to a masked figure, confirming that he was also able to discern that the young lady over there had created them. He instructed the masked appraiser to check the 3 potions for him, to which the figure replied, acknowledging his lord's command. The masked appraiser took the vials, examining them with a soft clink. Daisy, observing him, realized that he also possessed an appraisal ability, though unlike her, he could even see who had made the items. Just as the appraisal began, the doors burst open with a sharp sound, and a young man in regal attire entered, apologizing for his intrusion. The officials, including the finance minister and the bald man, gasped in shock, recognizing him as His Majesty. The royal figure, having just arrived, immediately inquired about the progress of the presentation. One of the officials, a man with a prominent mustache, responded that there had been discussions about acquiring new materials. The official with the spiky hair then questioned if the young lady present was indeed the alchemist. The mustached official clarified that the samples provided by the young lady were currently undergoing appraisal. Daisy, the young alchemist, curtsied gracefully before the royal figure, expressing her honor that he would view her product. She formally introduced herself as Daisy, the second daughter of Henry von Priestlaria, and conveyed her pleasure in meeting him. The royal figure observed Daisy, noting that he had a son her age who still required a private tutor for etiquette. He expressed surprise at Daisy's politeness, acknowledging that she had clearly studied etiquette well. The appraiser delivered his findings to the finance minister, confirming that the 3 samples possessed 1.5 times the potency of their regular counterparts. He then revealed that the creator was none other than Miss Daisy, causing a collective gasp of surprise from the officials. The mustached official pondered the revelation, acknowledging Daisy's exceptional talent to possess such skill at only 5 years old. He then turned to the spiky-haired official, asking if they should proceed with purchase arrangements. The spiky-haired official confirmed that the Mage Division intended to purchase mana potions for dangerous missions, and the Knight Division also sought good potions for themselves. He then asked Daisy if she could mass-produce and regularly deliver these potions. Daisy, with a confident expression, explained that all the medicinal herbs used as raw materials were grown in her own fields. She asserted that this ensured a high-quality material supply, allowing her to deliver a steady supply of potions without issue. She added that she had been unable to obtain good quality materials in the city. The spiky-haired official reflected on Daisy's explanation, finding it both logical and clear. He mused that for someone her age to conclude that cultivating her own fields was necessary to improve product quality was truly remarkable. He believed the secret to high-quality goods lay in using fresh, nutrient-rich materials. The finance minister approved the purchase of Daisy's potions, instructing them to ensure the purchase price reflected their quality. The spiky-haired official added that Daisy also had Heinrich's backing, and her ability to think and her high aspirations were laudable, extending beyond her technical skills. The military affairs minister, pleased with Daisy's presentation, declared her success and proposed drafting a contract with the precise details. The finance minister acknowledged this, while Daisy, beaming, confirmed her understanding. As the discussion continued, Daisy, still elated, was asked by the royal figure if she desired anything beyond the agreed-upon payment as a reward. He praised her incredible growth and passion for alchemy, especially considering her young age. She pondered his offer, then humbly requested a slightly more advanced alchemy textbook, admitting she currently only possessed a beginner's version. The royal figure, observing her earnestness, seemed to consider her request carefully. He readily granted her request, confident that her continued development would greatly benefit the country. He expressed his delight in having such a rising star, acknowledging that their nation had fallen behind in the field of alchemy. Daisy, clutching the new textbook to her chest, expressed her profound gratitude, promising to use it with the utmost care. Her eyes sparkled with excitement. Later, as Daisy and the royal figure departed the grand building, she reflected on the immense relief she felt that the purchase had been approved, despite the initial surprise of His Majesty's sudden appearance. Inside a carriage, the royal figure closed the window, while Daisy, still holding her new book, eagerly declared that once they returned home, she would immediately begin preparations. She then reviewed the contract details, noting the prices: 3,000 lyres for a regular potion, 9,000 lyres for a mana potion, and a staggering 300,000 lyres for a high potion. The royal figure chuckled, confirming the figures. Daisy's eyes widened in disbelief as she read the total: 1,000,000 lyres per week. She exclaimed that she had never even seen a gold coin before, questioning if such a generous sum was truly appropriate for a 5-year-old. The royal figure affirmed it, stating it was approximately 3 times the normal market price. She then mused that with such substantial earnings, she might even be able to acquire advanced equipment, like the centrifuge she had read about in a book. The royal figure, smiling, explained that the generous terms simply reflected the high expectations placed upon her. She looked out from her window, a thoughtful expression on her face, as a young boy passed by, pulling a cart. He declared his intention to work diligently from that moment forward. As he continued his journey, carrying a large box, the boy mused about the ease of a noble's life, complete with carriages, contrasting it with his own arduous task of walking to deliver goods to his boss. Still burdened by the box, he hurried through the bustling street, knowing he had to finish his work quickly to avoid being scolded by his boss once more. As the morning light streamed into her room, Daisy stretched languidly, a soft groan escaping her lips as she blinked away the last vestiges of sleep. Outside, the gentle chirping of birds heralded the new day. She then realized the significance of the date, a quiet thought forming in her mind. It was her birthday. A small, ornate box sat on a nearby table, perhaps a gift awaiting her attention. She checked her personal status, a familiar interface displaying her current abilities. As the second daughter of the Viscount, her occupation was alchemist, with various magic skills and an appraisal skill already noted. She was surprised to find new skills added to her status, including concealment, and a new gift listed: the Green Fairy King's favor. The revelation left her wide-eyed, pondering the implications of such a blessing. She decided it would be prudent to hide her appraisal skill using her new concealment ability, lest others discover her unique talents. Her thoughts then drifted to the Fairy King's favor, wondering if it referred to the small, winged creatures she often heard about in fairy tales, and if such beings could truly exist. Later, she was outside, struggling to push a heavy cart laden with a large barrel. She grumbled to herself, finding it incredibly difficult to tend to the expanded field due to the immense amount of water it now required. As she continued to struggle, she realized the necessity of honing her magic skills, particularly water magic, to alleviate the burden of her tasks. She sighed, contemplating how much easier her work would be if she were more proficient. Suddenly, something caught her eye. Unbeknownst to her, nearby, several small, winged creatures flitted about, seemingly oblivious to her presence. One lounged lazily on a broad leaf, another sat perched on a wooden post, chattering softly, and a third drank delicately from a dew-kissed leaf. Suddenly, she gasped, her eyes wide with shock as she finally registered the tiny beings. One of the fairies, startled by her sudden exclamation, turned its head to look at her. She hesitantly asked who they were, her voice barely a whisper. The fairies, however, seemed more amused than surprised, one of them remarking that it had taken her long enough to notice them. Daisy was abruptly pulled from her thoughts as a small, winged figure, one of the green fairies she had just encountered, pointed an accusatory finger at her. The fairy, with pigtails and a stern expression, declared that they were green fairies, obviously. Another fairy, with spiky hair, affirmed her statement. Daisy could only register a silent scold and a glare from the tiny beings. The fairy with pigtails continued her reprimand, exclaiming that Daisy was really slow-witted for not realizing they had been helping her all this time. Daisy, bewildered, could only question, "Helping me?" The revelation that fairies truly existed caused a flurry of wings around her head as she processed the astonishing fact. The fairy then elaborated, explaining they had driven out insects feeding on leaves, using magic to do so, and had also assisted with pulling weeds. As the tiny beings spoke, Daisy's expression shifted to one of deep thought. She inquired when they had first arrived, and a sudden realization dawned on her. Now that they mentioned it, she truly had never had to pull weeds or contend with insect infestations in her fields. The fairy with pigtails explained that their assistance began when Daisy was still a child, helping her out in the garden. Daisy then recalled a moment from her past, a powerful wind blade spell she had cast, realizing with a gasp that the fairies must have been involved. They had also aided her when she was picking fruits on the outskirts of the capital. The fairy elaborated further, stating that Daisy's magical skills at the time left much to be desired, so they had taken it upon themselves to guide the magic current for her instead. Daisy's eyes widened in astonishment as she finally connected the dots, exclaiming, "So, the fairies were the ones who helped me cast that spell back then?" The spiky-haired fairy quickly interjected, telling the pigtail fairy not to say stupid things and to cut it out, seemingly embarrassed by her bluntness. The pigtail fairy, however, continued, revealing that she had even gone crying to the Green Fairy King to complain about how clueless Daisy had been regarding their constant presence. Daisy, meanwhile, was overcome with excitement, realizing the implications of these revelations. "So that explains it. It feels like I'm the protagonist of a story." The pigtail fairy, still slightly miffed, confirmed that it was indeed quite inconvenient that they couldn't communicate unless one possessed the favor of the Green Fairy King. Daisy, connecting this to her recent status update, gasped, "Oh, could it have something to do with the gifts that have been recently added to my status? Is that it?" Daisy, now fully understanding the extent of their long-standing assistance, bowed deeply to the tiny fairies, expressing her profound gratitude. "Thank you so much for everything you've done for me so far," she declared. As the fairies fluttered around her head, she gripped her hand, a thoughtful expression on her face, murmuring, "I guess so." The pigtail fairy quickly covered the spiky-haired fairy's mouth, preventing him from saying anything further, and reassured Daisy that she didn't need to worry about repaying them. "We love the nutritional drinks you make. They help us a lot," she explained. Daisy, surprised, uttered an before her expression turned determined. "I want to repay you in any way I can. What would work best for you?" she asked, prompting the pigtail fairy to ponder. "Let's see. Well then," the spiky-haired fairy confirmed his enjoyment of the drinks, stating, "Yep, I help myself to it from time to time." Daisy, standing beside a large barrel, looked astonished as she realized what he meant. "Are you talking about the nutritional supplements I mixed in the water for the field?" she questioned. The pigtail fairy, with an excited gasp, then added, "But I also like sweet things." She was approached by a small fairy who floated before her, asking for her basket, explaining they had a present for her. Daisy, holding the empty basket, looked surprised but agreed, and the fairies urged her to hurry, leading the way. They led her to a dense bush, its branches heavy with ripe, dark berries. She gasped in astonishment at the sight of the abundant blackberries, while the fairy, perched on her head, proudly declared her amazing for finding them. She marveled that no birds had dared to eat them, realizing she had no idea such a bounty of blackberries grew so close to her house. The fairies, flitting around the bush, explained they had been keeping a watchful eye on them. The fairies, with a welcoming gesture, encouraged her not to hold back and to take as many as she desired. Daisy, her face beaming with a grateful smile, thanked the fairies, who then offered their assistance in gathering the berries. Later, she returned to her house, excitedly presenting a full basket of blackberries to her mother. Her mother, equally amazed, suggested they make a delicious dessert with their harvest. Her mother then recalled that a messenger from the palace had brought a package for Daisy earlier that morning, leaving it in her laboratory. Daisy looked up, surprised, wondering if the package was for her. She made her way to the laboratory, where she found the package, a large, heavy box wrapped in paper, and struggled to lift it. She began to tear open the wrapping, wondering what could be inside, only to discover it contained the very books she had requested from His Majesty. She delved into the newly acquired books, discovering one titled, "How to Dish Up Your Dining Table with Delicious Goods Using Alchemy." Another set comprised a 3-book series of primers on alchemy. Though she hadn't specifically requested the Cooking Alchemy book, its contents immediately piqued her interest, prompting her to flip through its pages for anything useful. As she continued to read, her eyes landed on a recipe for soft bread. The very idea of soft bread made her mouth water, a stark contrast to her previous understanding that bread was always dry and hard. This particular recipe seemed remarkably easy to execute. Suddenly, a small fairy, with a cheerful pop out and a melodic hum, appeared beside her, causing her to jump in surprise. The fairy, seemingly oblivious to her shock, innocently inquired what she was doing. She quickly recovered from the fright, recognizing her tiny companion. The fairy, still curious, then asked if she intended to bake bread. Daisy confirmed that the book indicated bread could indeed be made through alchemy. The fairy, finding the prospect of delicious bread exciting, offered his assistance, but only if she promised to share the finished product. She consulted the recipe further, noting the need for honey and blackberries to create the yeast. Her fairy companion, eager to begin, immediately urged her to start the process. With a cheerful affirmation, the fairy declared he would retrieve the honey from the kitchen, ready to contribute to their baking endeavor. True to his word, the fairy zipped out of the open window, a tiny blur heading towards the kitchen. The recipe called for high-quality, perfectly ripe, super juicy, and sweet blackberries, along with honey, described as the culmination of bees gathering nectar from all sorts of wildflowers, possessing a mild taste. Daisy began the first steps of the alchemy, carefully adding water to the blackberries in a jar, then following it with a measured drip of honey, all under the watchful, eager eyes of the fairy. She, focused, carefully closed the lid on a jar containing hydromel and blackberries, which were on the verge of turning into yeast. She then gently shook the bottle, applying the alchemical fermentation techniques she had diligently practiced. A small fairy watched with interest. Her efforts proved successful, as the appraisal confirmed the yeast was now of good quality, having fermented perfectly. She proudly declared her achievement, holding up the jar. Moments later, the little fairy, now fluttering excitedly, joined her as she announced that all that remained was to add the newly created yeast to the dough. Soon after, she approached Kate, who was busy in the kitchen, and politely asked if she could speak with her. Kate, turning to face her, inquired about the matter, to which Daisy responded by asking if Kate had already begun making bread. Kate confirmed she was just about to start. Daisy, with a triumphant flourish, presented the jar of alchemy yeast to Kate, instructing her to mix it into the dough and complete the bread making. Kate, intrigued, wondered aloud about the mysterious ingredient. Kate, still processing the request, questioned Daisy about the term soft bread, finding it an unfamiliar concept. Daisy clarified that it was an ingredient she had crafted using alchemy. With a warm smile, Kate readily agreed to help, suggesting they begin by kneading the batter together. Together, they began to knead the dough, pressing and working it with steady hands. After some time, the dough had sufficiently fermented, puffing up beautifully and indicating it was ready for the next stage of preparation. Daisy sighed in relief, pleased with their progress. She gazed at the alchemy dough, which had swelled to an astonishing size, feeling incredibly soft to the touch. A thought crossed her mind. Was her appraisal skill guiding her through this process? After the dough had been sufficiently fermented and punched down, the next steps involved dividing it into smaller, uniform pieces, allowing them to rest briefly, and then placing them into the oven to bake. Moments later, Daisy and Kate watched in awe as the freshly baked bread emerged from the oven, its size and golden hue eliciting a collective gasp of surprise. The bread, now even larger than before, radiated a comforting warmth. Daisy, her eyes wide with anticipation, declared them delicious, and Kate, equally excited, suggested they taste them immediately. As Daisy took her first bite, a look of profound surprise spread across her face, while Kate, already enjoying her own piece, continued to munch happily. She exclaimed that the bread was not only incredibly soft, but also emitted a delightful aroma. Kate, her eyes sparkling, wholeheartedly agreed, declaring it the most delicious bread she had ever tasted. Kate then reminded Daisy to teach her how to make the yeast next time, and asked if she could take a few pieces of bread with her. Meanwhile, the small fairy on Daisy's head chimed in, requesting that Daisy take some bread to the lab for him. Later, as they walked through the bustling market, Daisy reflected on the need to diligently work on her yeast-making skills. Kate, walking beside her, happily shared that the soft bread had been a tremendous success with her family. Suddenly, a harsh voice cut through the market chatter, declaring, "You're fired. Get out of my sight." Daisy observed the scene, a young boy falling to the ground, clearly distressed. She mused that finding an assistant with appraisal skills would be ideal for her own work, as managing the field, deliveries, and yeast production was too much for one person. The boy, Marcus, cursed his master, who had just dismissed him for producing bad quality junk. Kate, having heard the commotion, questioned if the boy had truly said bad quality. Daisy, her eyes fixed on Marcus, realized with a jolt that he possessed the appraisal skill, a valuable asset for an alchemist. She realized she had found a rare talent, exclaiming that she had struck gold, and that the young boy, Marcus, must be the one. Daisy urged herself to act quickly, recognizing the appraisal skill right under her nose, a talent she had not expected to find so readily. As she moved, Daisy suddenly grabbed Marcus, startling him. He reacted with a surprised exclamation, questioning her abrupt action and asking what she thought she was doing. Marcus, still reeling from the sudden grab, looked at her with wide eyes. Daisy, her expression bright and earnest, then directly asked him if he would be willing to become her assistant. Daisy, a young alchemist, introduced herself to a boy who looked at her with surprise. His stomach then let out a loud growl, prompting her to ask if he was hungry. He admitted he had been kicked out by his employer and had not yet had breakfast. She then turned to Kate, asking if the nearby restaurant was still open. Kate replied that it was likely closed. Daisy, undeterred, offered to fix him breakfast at her house, inviting him to come along. The boy, startled by the invitation from a milady, quickly followed her. Moments later, Daisy's mother, Yulia, called out to her, asking her to wait. Yulia then inquired if the boy was an acquaintance of Daisy's. Daisy explained that he had just been fired from his job and was starving. Yulia, understanding, asked Daisy to properly introduce him later. Upon entering Daisy's room, the boy gasped in awe at its well-furnished interior. Daisy simply stated it was a room. Soon after, Kate brought in soft bread, which the boy devoured, exclaiming he had never tasted anything so good. Daisy, pleased, asked if he liked it, then revealed she could also make other things. He continued to praise the food's quality, noting he delivered goods to many countries, but had never encountered anything so high-grade. He then formally introduced himself as Marcus, a 7-year-old average peasant. Daisy, in turn, introduced herself as Daisy, 6 years old, and expressed her pleasure in meeting him. She then explained that she also possessed appraisal skills, but Marcus still struggled to comprehend how she produced such high-quality items. Leading him outside, she showed him a field she had created using alchemy, explaining it housed her ingredients. He observed the herbs, noting their excellent quality, unlike the wilted ones he had seen in other places he had worked. She clarified that their quality was hard to discern without appraisal, and she made a point of using freshly cultivated ingredients because her parents often criticized her as an amateur. Marcus acknowledged her dedication. Daisy then proposed that he work under her, asking for his thoughts. He looked surprised, questioning if she could even hire him. She explained that she would need to discuss it with her father. Just then, her father, Henry, appeared, confirming that he would indeed be Marcus's employer. He informed Marcus that he would live in the servants' quarters and asked if that was acceptable. He questioned Marcus, asking if he was working under duress, but then acknowledged Daisy's recent self-sufficiency and instructed Marcus to assist her. Marcus, in turn, explained his dire circumstances. His father had passed away, his mother was ill, and he desperately needed money for her medicine, as he was the sole provider for his younger siblings. Understanding Marcus's plight, he then informed him that his mother would not recover without a greater potion, and promptly handed him a small bottle containing the powerful medicine. He assured Marcus that he could repay the cost slowly over time. He gently patted Marcus's head, acknowledging his hard work at such a young age, and asked if he was truly comfortable accepting such a precious gift. Overwhelmed, Marcus could only manage a tearful thank you, while Daisy also expressed her gratitude. Daisy's father then instructed Marcus to go home and deliver the potion to his mother, promising to handle all the necessary paperwork himself. Daisy then approached her father, declaring her intention to pay Marcus's wages. Her father praised her admirable sentiment, but firmly stated that providing for necessary expenses was a parent's duty. He dismissed her concerns, suggesting she view it as a future investment instead. The next morning, Marcus departed from the Priestlaria mansion, expressing his thanks for the kindness shown to him. As he left, Daisy's father received a letter from Maid, which contained a poignant request. "Please take care of my son." Seabass then led Marcus to his new room, which Marcus found surprisingly spacious. The butler informed him that he had been appointed as Marcus's tutor and would instruct him in all the necessary etiquette and manners. Meanwhile, Daisy sat thoughtfully in her room, surrounded by 3 small, fluttering fairies. She explained to them that she had just taken in a new boy named Marcus as her assistant. She continued to ponder, wondering if the fairies could simply show Marcus the ropes or if she should ask them to care for the field. She realized there were countless things he needed to learn, and it had been careless of her not to fully consider the implications. Teaching him everything while managing her other duties would prove more challenging than she initially thought. Daisy then turned to the fairies, asking if they would help her teach Marcus. She concluded that the simplest solution was to make it possible for him to see them. Moments later, Marcus arrived at the field, having been summoned by Daisy after his lessons. He gasped in astonishment as he suddenly perceived the fairies fluttering around him. Daisy, observing his reaction, explained that these were the green fairies who had protected the field until now and urged him to relax. He found himself on the ground, surrounded by the small, winged fairies. They immediately began instructing him to collect water from the field, both morning and evening. From the window, Daisy observed, noting that they would ensure he was trained rigorously, even if he found it difficult at first. He struggled with the task, attempting to interact with the elusive fairies, who playfully evaded his grasp. One of them admonished him to stop throwing water at the lazy man and to give his best effort. Meanwhile, Daisy continued to watch his efforts, noting that the fairies were quite enthusiastic about the training. She mused that they were certainly working him hard. Below, Marcus, looking exasperated, was scolded by a fairy for forgetting a spot and losing focus. He reluctantly agreed to get up and move. After his outdoor training, he moved indoors, where Daisy greeted him, remarking on his good work. He looked at the unfamiliar equipment, asking what it was. She explained it was a distillation apparatus, used to create pure water, a staple of alchemy. She continued to elaborate on the process, explaining that making distilled water would be one of his morning duties as her assistant. Marcus admitted he was a bit nervous, as it was his first time doing anything like this. Daisy reassured him, stating that the sturdy bottle wouldn't break easily as long as he knew how to use it. Following her instructions, he began the task, and soon, Daisy pointed out the successful result, distilled water. He stared in amazement, realizing this was alchemy. She confirmed his understanding, adding that this was just the first step. She then clarified the day's lesson, stating she would teach him how to make distilled water, acknowledging that he had no prior training in alchemy. She promised that he would eventually become capable of making potions, and that she would ensure he mastered the process. Marcus, filled with enthusiasm, declared he would be in her care, and they sealed their new partnership with a handshake. Daisy's older brother stood amidst towering bookshelves, holding a book titled Alchemy, and contemplating the unusual idea of using alchemy to create a delicious meal. He explained to Daisy that he had received the peculiar book, which detailed using alchemy for cooking as a bonus from His Majesty the King, alongside the main alchemy series. Daisy, having never heard of such a subject, expressed her astonishment at the king's collection of rare texts. Daisy then mused aloud that perhaps her brother might genuinely develop a fondness for cooking, a thought he seemed to entertain with a slight smile. Later that night, the conversation shifted to the possibility of His Majesty sampling Daisy's soft bread, a proposal that would soon be discussed. Daisy's father, Henry, agreed with her assessment, finding the alchemy cooking book to be compelling evidence of her brother's burgeoning interest in culinary arts. Daisy affirmed her conviction with a resolute yes. However, Yulia interjected, expressing her doubt. She questioned whether offering such a simple item as soft bread, no matter how delicious, to His Highness might be considered too plain. Henry dismissed Yulia's concern, confidently stating that the bread was as perfect as it could be. He then revealed that His Majesty had 2 young children, one 6 years old and the other 3, implying the bread would be suitable for them. Daisy, her eyes wide with anticipation, eagerly urged her father to proceed. Henry, with a smile, agreed to hash out the details of the schedule with the royal family, a decision that brought a contented smile to Yulia's face. The next day, Daisy's older brother was engrossed in his alchemical experiments, carefully manipulating a flask with a dropper, while Daisy sat nearby, lost in thought. He noticed her troubled expression and asked what was wrong, observing that she had been looking worried all day. Daisy, lying down with a pencil in her mouth, confessed her struggle to devise a suitable plan for presenting her soft bread to His Majesty's family. Her brother, realizing the depth of her concern, acknowledged it as a dangerous preoccupation. She continued to ponder the upcoming meeting with the prince, realizing that something sweet would undoubtedly be preferred given his young age. Her brother, seeking to contribute, asked if she had any good ideas, to which she replied that she intended to make the presentation more exciting. He then suggested soft bread slathered with jam, imagining how delicious it would taste. She, in turn, recalled having made jam a while back, connecting it to his idea of something sweet. Her brother elaborated on his idea, asking if she could fill the soft bread with jam. She considered the proposal, but felt that simply putting jam on soft bread might be a bit too plain. Suddenly, a new thought struck her. If the jam were inside the bread, the royal family would be pleasantly surprised with the first bite. Her brother enthusiastically agreed, declaring it a great idea. She decided to try other fillings besides jam, diligently noting her ideas in a book. Her brother, eager to taste the results, expressed his wish to try them immediately. Meanwhile, in the kitchen, Yulia reacted with surprise to the concept of putting jam inside soft bread, a notion that seemed entirely novel to her. Yulia admitted that such a thought had never crossed her mind, finding the idea intriguing. Daisy explained that she was also considering stuffing other sweet things inside the bread, and Yulia, now fully on board, enthusiastically agreed to try putting all sorts of fillings inside to see what worked best. Moments later, Yulia presented a tray of freshly baked soft bread, informing them that she had followed the instructions to put jam inside. Daisy took a bite, her expression thoughtful. Daisy observed the bread's dry texture and concluded that it wouldn't do. She found the taste rather bland, not significantly different from simply spreading jam on top. Her brother concurred, noting the lack of moisture. Her brother exclaimed that the idea of making it moist sounded incredibly delicious. Daisy, holding an open book, wondered if she could find a clue within its pages to achieve the desired moisture. She continued her research, noting that chantilly cream, despite its luxurious taste and fluffy texture, would require a centrifuge to prepare. Intrigued, she expressed a desire to try it, but Yulia suggested custard cream instead, which Daisy agreed would provide a very soft texture. Considering other options like pudding and cinnamon custard tart, Daisy decided to put the chantilly cream on hold for the time being. Later, during afternoon tea, her older brother tasted the newly refined soft bread. His eyes widened as he exclaimed that he could distinctly taste strawberry jam inside, confirming its deliciousness. Yulia then observed that the bread was not only soft but also wonderfully moist inside. Daisy, beaming with pride, added that her particular creation was filled with blueberries and custard, further enhancing its appeal. Confident in her success, Daisy declared her certainty that His Majesty and his family would be pleased with this new bread. She explained that by incorporating jam and custard as a filling, the bread itself became moist, effectively solving 2 problems with one solution. She took another bite, noting that it didn't feel dry no matter how much she ate, and that it paired perfectly with black tea. The scene shifted to a room within the royal castle, where Daisy's older brother and Prince William were seated, awaiting the day of the presentation. Outside, the grand architecture of the royal castle stood tall, marking the significance of the occasion. Inside the royal castle, as the doors clicked open and a group of officials shuffled in, Prince William stood to greet Daisy, addressing her formally as Your Majesty. Among the arriving party were various officials, including Marcus and an appraiser. William, the adult prince, then gestured for everyone to be seated, assuring them there was no need for formalities and encouraging them to relax. Hearing the exchange, Daisy reassured the young Prince William that it was quite all right, as she didn't mind in the slightest. The Queen, holding the young Prince William, apologized for his eagerness, explaining that he wouldn't stop talking about trying the soft bread. King Heinrich, the boy's father, added that it was only because his son had never heard of soft bread before, and he himself wanted to try it right away. The adult Prince William then addressed King Heinrich, asking for his thoughts and if he would like to taste the bread now. King Heinrich, in turn, looked at Daisy and inquired if she was the girl who had made the bread. Before the king could respond, the appraiser interjected, addressing King Heinrich. The young Prince William, held by his father, eagerly reached out, repeatedly calling for bread. King Heinrich, however, stated that he needed to sort something out first before proceeding. He stood before a masked appraiser, who confirmed there were no issues with the offering, stating, "No issues, Your Majesty." The appraiser then added that confirming the offering was important, even if it was just a formality. A young Prince William stood beside the king, looking up at him. He then turned to the adult Prince William, who was seated at a table. The king apologized for the delay, explaining that the confirmation of the offering was important, even if it was just a formality. The adult Prince William, with a gentle smile, assured him it was not an issue, understanding the importance of the process. Moments later, the queen, seated at the table, eagerly asked if she could go ahead and try the bread. The king, holding the young Prince William, gestured for them to enjoy. The young Prince William, his eyes wide with excitement, reached into the basket of bread. He exclaimed how incredibly soft it felt, then declared he wanted that particular one. He immediately took a large bite, his cheeks puffing out as he chewed. "It's so yummy," he exclaimed, wondering aloud what this delicious creation could be. Still chewing, he turned to his father, the king, and announced that there was smooth cream inside. The queen, hearing this, tugged gently on Daisy's sleeve, expressing her amazement and desire to try it as well. Daisy, now holding a piece of the bread, took a bite, her eyes closing in pure delight. "So sweet," she murmured, savoring the taste. The queen, watching her, smiled and promised to get one for herself right away. Daisy, her face flushed with happiness, clasped her hands to her cheeks, overwhelmed with joy that everyone was enjoying her food. The queen, now also eating a piece of bread, commented on how adorable Daisy and the young Prince William were. The king, observing the scene, noted that the queen, whom he referred to as Margaret, also seemed to enjoy them, to which she affirmed they were fantastic. Later, as the family gathered around a low table with the remaining bread, the adult Prince William thanked Daisy for the day, praising her soft bread as truly delicious. Daisy, in turn, humbly replied that she should be the one thanking them. She then added that thanks to them, she had made good progress in her research. The king, pleased, remarked that he was glad to hear that picking those books for her was the right choice. He then asked Daisy if the books he had sent her were helpful, hoping she had enjoyed them. She then turned to the king, asking if she might pose a question. She explained that she had read about a device called a centrifuge in one of the books he had sent her, and was now searching for one. The king, holding the young Prince William, looked surprised by the unfamiliar term centrifuge. He inquired about its function, and if she knew where such a device could be purchased. She clarified that it used centrifugal force to separate materials like solids and liquids, demonstrating with a simple diagram. The king listened intently, acknowledging that it sounded like a device capable of difficult tasks and an important tool often used in alchemy. Daisy then revealed that with this device, she could create a dessert called chantilly cream. The king chuckled, pleased to hear her speak of something more befitting her age, and expressed his eagerness to try it. Overjoyed by his response, Daisy exclaimed her thanks. The king, still holding the young prince, declared that as a token of gratitude for her delicious bread, he would task his subordinates with searching for a centrifuge. He affirmed that if it was necessary for improving her alchemy skills, they must endeavor to find it. The next morning, a small fairy flew to Daisy, carrying a letter. Daisy, surprised, asked what it said, then realized it was from the king. The letter conveyed that the royal family truly enjoyed the fluffy bread and wished to adopt it for their dining table. Meanwhile, the young Prince William, still craving the treat, cried out for more fluffy bread. Daisy, accompanied by a fairy, understood the urgency and resolved to prepare the recipe and organize the delivery immediately. The fairy beside her affirmed that such a reaction was only natural, given how delicious the bread was. Later, Marcus, the delivery boy, burst in, excitedly announcing that the king had sent a birthday gift for Daisy. The delivery of the bread went smoothly, and Daisy celebrated her 7th birthday. Daisy stared in awe at the gift, a magnificent centrifuge, the very device she had sought. She beamed with excitement, declaring that with the new centrifuge, she could finally make chantilly cream. She planned to gather all the necessary ingredients, perhaps as early as the next day. The young boy beside her, Prince William, looked on with a puzzled expression, unfamiliar with the terms centrifuge and chantilly cream. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the capital, the Knight Commander, Daisy's older brother, arrived at a grand building. He inquired if the war minister was present, and an official promptly confirmed that he was in his office, thanking the Knight Commander for his hard work. As the Knight Commander entered the war minister's office, the official reported that a patrolling unit had sent word of abnormal behavior and monster conflicts in the forest south of the capital. The Knight Commander listened intently, recognizing this as a potential risk and threat to the capital itself. He immediately instructed the official to strengthen the capital's defenses, emphasizing the need for discretion to avoid mass panic among the populace. The official acknowledged the order, agreeing that countermeasures were necessary. The official confirmed his understanding, and the Knight Commander added that if the situation escalated, they might need to call upon the adventurers Lisha and Mark to join the battle. The official then gazed out a window, a thoughtful expression on his face, wondering if the abnormal behavior of magical beasts was a harbinger of greater dangers to come. Far from the capital's concerns, Daisy and Prince William were now outside, amidst a dark, rain-swept forest. She was engrossed in setting up her new centrifuge, carefully reading its manual, while he watched her, still somewhat bewildered by her scientific pursuits. The forest around them, however, seemed to grow increasingly ominous, with the sound of snapping branches echoing through the downpour. Deep within the shadowed depths of the forest, unseen by the children, a pair of glowing eyes emerged from the darkness, accompanied by a low, guttural growl, signaling a hidden, monstrous presence. At a bustling market stall, Daisy, Yulia, and a young boy discussed their needs. Daisy, eager for the freshest ingredients, confirmed that the more fresh the cream, the better. Yulia, holding a large bowl, explained that to make chantilly, they would need milk. Daisy then pointed toward a specific shop, recommending it. As they continued through the market, Daisy noticed an unusual number of soldiers patrolling. Yulia, observing the same, wondered aloud if the city seemed noisier than usual. Nearby, a soldier commented to his comrade that he also felt there were too many soldiers about. The young boy, however, dismissed their concerns, suggesting that the soldiers were likely just conducting their regular training exercises, which occurred every month. He hoped it was nothing serious. Moments later, Daisy stood before a milk vendor, requesting the richest milk available. The shopkeeper, greeting her warmly, inquired about the specific kind she desired, noting they had a few options. Upon hearing Daisy's preference for the one with the most fat, the richer the better, the shopkeeper suggested milk from a red-haired cow, assuring her of its rich flavor. Just as Daisy was about to make her selection, a sudden, jarring noise echoed through the market, startling everyone. Daisy, Yulia, and the shopkeepers all looked up, their expressions shifting to alarm as they wondered what was happening. Amidst the growing panic, a soldier's urgent voice cut through the commotion, shouting an evacuation order. He warned everyone that a pack of stray magical beasts was heading towards them from the south, instructing them to immediately evacuate to the north side of the central district. Daisy gasped in shock. Yulia, her face grim, quickly decided they needed to return to the mansion to prepare for evacuation. She urged Daisy and the young boy to hurry. The shopkeeper, bowing apologetically, explained that she had to close her shop immediately. As they made their way back, Yulia instructed Daisy to fetch her belongings from the mansion while she arranged for a carriage to transport them. Once inside her room, Daisy looked at a box filled with potions, a realization dawning on her. She had not yet finished delivering this week's supply. She considered the dire implications. If a massive horde of monsters reached the capital, there would undoubtedly be many injuries in the ensuing battle, and supplies would surely run short. With a determined expression, she closed the box of potions. She clenched her fists, her expression resolute, as she grabbed a small bag, preparing to depart. Meanwhile, in a different room, a note lay on a desk. Her older brother, having just entered, called out, announcing that the carriage had arrived for their evacuation. Despite the call, she continued to run, her thoughts consumed by the danger. She acknowledged her father and the others were strong, but worried about the whole horde, believing one could never be too careful. Her determination solidified as she declared that even if she couldn't fight, there was still something she, as an alchemist, could do, saving lives. Far from Daisy's resolve, at the city's south gate, her father, a long-haired man, furiously commanded his soldiers. He roared for them not to let the monsters enter the city and to kill them all, lamenting that the beasts had already breached the gates. The battle raged as a soldier cried out, struck by a monstrous, rabbit-like magical beast. Another armored soldier moved to stab the creature, but it proved resilient. He continued to command, instructing his soldiers to take down each beast as a group, noting there weren't many left. A soldier, having been knocked down, thanked him as he was told to get back on his feet. With a final push, they managed to take one down. The fight was far from over, however, as more of the spiky, rabbit-like magical beasts continued their assault, clashing violently with the city's defenders. Amidst the chaos, two adventurers, a male wielding a spear and a female with a curved sword, moved with incredible speed and precision, effortlessly cutting through the magical beasts. The soldiers watched in awe, one remarking on how amazing those two adventurers were, especially considering it took 5 of them to handle just one of the beasts. He continued his fierce assault, driving his spear into the magical beast, as his companion, Lisha, called out to him, urging him not to let the creature escape. The beast, however, suddenly changed direction, darting toward the small figure standing nearby. As the creature lunged, Lisha cried out in alarm, questioning why a child was present on the battlefield. Before the beast could strike, the male adventurer, Mark, swiftly intercepted it, declaring that he had the situation under control. Lisha then turned her attention to the young girl, Daisy, sternly ordering her to hurry up and evacuate, demanding to know why she was there. Mark, however, approached Daisy with a gentler demeanor, asking if she was all right. Daisy, still somewhat dazed, managed a quiet thank you. Daisy, opening a case filled with vials, bravely declared herself an alchemist, stating her intention to provide rear support. Lisha, however, remained firm, asserting that she was not being harsh, but that the battlefield was no place for a child. Mark explained that their current position was already the front line, suggesting that if Daisy intended to provide support, she should fall back a bit. Lisha, still skeptical, pondered Daisy's definition of rear support. He acknowledged Daisy's courage as admirable, but cautioned her not to overdo it. Lisha then added a stern warning, instructing Daisy to run as fast as she could if things went bad and to absolutely avoid going near the gate. She gently patted Daisy's head, emphasizing that a little lady should never strain herself. With the adventurer's words echoing, Daisy turned and began to walk away from the immediate danger, clutching her case of potions. Mark offered a final wave of farewell as she departed, while Lisha watched her go. Meanwhile, at the city's gate, Daisy's father, Lord Henry, received a report that the last of the horde was nowhere to be seen, and the beasts that had breached the gates had all been eliminated. He acknowledged the good work, noting that the mage unit was in charge of the outside of the gates. His son, the vice-captain, confirmed the orders, stating, "Yes, sir." Lord Henry then instructed them to continue the cleanup but to remain vigilant, as the reason for the attack remained unclear, and there was no telling if a second wave would come, even though the horde outside seemed to have dispersed for now. As the vice-captain stood, overseeing the gate, a soldier suddenly called out, reporting movement in the forest ahead. The vice-captain's expression shifted to one of surprise and concern, wondering what new threat approached. He took a sip from his cup, his gaze fixed on the forest beyond the city gate. A faint glint of light caught his eye, a subtle disturbance in the otherwise still darkness. Suddenly, a deafening impact shook the very foundations of the gate. He immediately barked orders, commanding all units to deploy defensive magic and protect the gate, as the structure began to splinter under the assault. The gate groaned, then violently collapsed inward, sending debris flying. One of the adventurers braced himself against the impact, while a young girl, caught in the chaos, cried out as she was thrown to the ground. His father, along with his brother and a soldier, stared in disbelief at the gaping hole where the formidable city gate once stood. The sheer force of the destruction left them speechless, questioning what monstrous power could have wrought such devastation. As the dust settled, the young girl, Daisy, looked on in horror as a massive, dark, clawed hand, seemingly made of shadow and stone, began to emerge from the wreckage, hinting at the true scale of the creature responsible. From the shattered remains of the gate, a colossal beast rose, its immense form casting a terrifying shadow. This was a behemoth, a legendary class magical beast of unknown strength, magic, and skills, its very presence a harbinger of doom. A colossal behemoth loomed over the city walls, its monstrous form casting a dark shadow as it advanced. Daisy's father, Henry, watched in horror, realizing this creature was the true reason for the horde's formation. He knew the situation was dire and immediately prepared for battle, unleashing a powerful attack, lava flare, hellfire bow. As the attack struck, Daisy's older brother, Remus, swiftly turned to his comrades, ordering the guards to fall back and take the wounded to safety. He then urgently called out to Henry, asking if he was all right, while simultaneously commanding all mages to stop the behemoth's movements. In response to Remus's command, a female academy student stepped forward, channeling her magic to conjure an ice pillar that erupted from the ground, attempting to impede the behemoth's advance. Seizing the moment, Henry roared, declaring it their chance, and commanding all knights to begin their attack. The behemoth, momentarily stunned by the ice, let out a low growl. The monstrous creature, however, quickly recovered, its body cracking the ice around it as it prepared to retaliate with a powerful, sweeping motion. As the behemoth moved, Henry braced himself, while Remus urgently instructed the mages to maintain the ice pillars, emphasizing the need to hold the creature in place. Henry then launched himself into the air, executing an aerial skill, flying sword attack, bringing his blade down with a mighty slash towards the behemoth. Below, other academy students wondered if the captain's attack would prove effective. Despite the powerful blow, the attack proved fruitless. The behemoth remained unharmed, its thick hide deflecting the strike. A knight, attempting to follow up, lunged forward, but the creature countered, sending him flying back with a forceful thud. The knight crashed hard against the ground, his armor rattling from the impact, as Remus observed the futile efforts. He realized their swords were not working, questioning if the behemoth had cast a defensive barrier. He then ordered the healers to retreat and prioritize tending to the wounded knights. Daisy's older brother, still focused on the behemoth, found himself overwhelmed as the colossal beast continued its destructive rampage, tearing through structures with raw power. A knight lay injured, while Daisy, hidden, watched the unfolding chaos with wide eyes. Dahlia, observing the scene, urgently called for someone to tend to the fallen knight. He lay slumped against the debris, severely wounded. Daisy, having heard Dahlia's plea, cautiously approached the injured knight, revealing a small box and declaring that she possessed potions. She knelt beside him, carefully opening the box. It would be more effective, she realized, to apply the potion directly to his wound rather than have him drink it, especially with the severity of the injury. A piercing blow straight through his armor, causing him to bleed profusely from his abdomen. With a determined expression, she uncorked a small vial. These particular potions, she knew, boasted an effect 1.5 times stronger than normal ones, making them crucial in this dire situation. As the potion sizzled upon his wound, the knight coughed, then gasped in relief, confirming its efficacy. He expressed profound gratitude, acknowledging that she had saved his life. Daisy, still holding the vial, advised him to drink the remaining potion, warning of potential internal bleeding. Meanwhile, from a higher vantage point on a tower, Dahlia continued to unleash her magic, but her efforts were visibly straining her, and she realized her magical reserves would not last much longer. Below, Daisy, having successfully aided the knight, resolved to press on and assist anyone else she could. Dahlia, noticing Daisy's resolve, quickly tossed a mana potion down to her, urging the lady in the tower to use it. Daisy deftly caught the vial, recognizing it as a mana potion. Dahlia then instructed her to distribute similar potions to the mage commanders, as they were currently expending the most magical power. The previously injured knight, now fully healed, stood ready to rejoin the fight. Back on the ground, Daisy's older brother engaged the behemoth in a perilous close-quarters battle. He swiftly opened a thick, bound book, his other hand already reaching for a potion, preparing a new tactic against the monstrous foe. He focused intently, his hands poised over an open book, preparing to unleash a powerful spell. He knew this would consume the last of his magic, but there was no other choice. With a surge of power, he unleashed a torrent of blazing inferno from the book. Nearby, soldiers reacted, with one pointing and shouting for everyone to retreat from the behemoth as the vice-captain's devastating attack began. The powerful flames engulfed the colossal behemoth, burning with an intense heat. Daisy's father observed the fiery assault, remarking that the attack from Hellfire Henry was indeed working. The behemoth roared in agony, its massive body writhing within the inferno. Exhausted from the immense magical exertion, he sat on the ground. Daisy approached him, holding a potion, and questioned why he was still on the battlefield. He explained that the flames were primarily burning the behemoth's eyes and the surrounding air, causing only limited damage. She then revealed she had distributed the rest of her potions to the soldiers, leaving only one. He took the potion from her, instructing her to get to safety and ordering the guards to look after her. She thanked him for his concern. As Daisy turned to leave, a soldier urgently called out to the vice-captain, warning him about the behemoth's continued threat. She sighed, realizing she would undoubtedly be scolded for sneaking on the battlefield. Daisy's older brother and Dahlia observed the behemoth, which, despite being fully engulfed in flames, appeared to be growing stronger. He warned Dahlia that even though the behemoth was now blind, it remained dangerous and was likely using sound to locate its targets. He emphasized that they could not waste this opportunity and must paralyze it. She acknowledged the danger, urging caution as they prepared to strike. With a rallying cry, Daisy's older brother and Dahlia charged forward, leading the knights in a battle against the monstrous behemoth, urging them to keep pace. He, Dahlia, and the knights unleashed the Hammer of Heaven's Wrath, a powerful coordinated attack that shimmered with light before erupting in a massive explosion of energy, engulfing the monstrous behemoth. Despite the searing flames that burned its flesh, the behemoth's eyes, previously blinded, regenerated with a sudden flash. Dahlia, witnessing this, urgently warned a knight named Mark not to hesitate. Moments after Dahlia's warning, Mark was violently struck by the behemoth, sent flying through the air, his spear clattering away. Both Dahlia and Daisy watched in shock as he fell. He crashed hard onto the ground, groaning in pain, his body twisted. Dahlia immediately cried out for a healer, but the behemoth showed no mercy, already preparing to launch another devastating attack. In response to the imminent threat, the knights quickly shifted into a phalanx formation, their shields raised, as they deployed powerful defensive magic to brace against the incoming assault. The behemoth's attack slammed into the defensive line with immense force, creating a violent explosion that sent knights reeling and cries of pain echoing through the battlefield. Daisy watched the unfolding disaster, her back to the struggling knights and the raging behemoth. She realized the grim truth. The situation was dire. They could not hold the beast back. There were no healers, and no one had any magical power left. She then looked down at her empty potion box, a stark reminder of her own limitations. Despite the overwhelming odds and their injuries, the knights continued to fight with desperate resolve. Overwhelmed by helplessness, Daisy's eyes welled with tears as she questioned if there was truly nothing she could do. As Daisy despaired, a familiar, ethereal figure of her past self appeared beside her, gently asking why she was so sad. She stood before Daisy, her ethereal form a stark contrast to the child's distress. Daisy, overwhelmed by the ongoing battle and her inability to help, cried out that it was frustrating to be so powerless. She lamented being a helpless child who could do nothing when it mattered most, lacking the power to protect everyone because she was not a magician. Her despair deepened, the pain of her helplessness becoming unbearable. She cried out that it made her so sad it was painful, and that she could only watch as people got hurt. Suddenly, a gentle voice from her past self cut through her anguish, declaring, "Don't cry, my kind and sweet child. You are not powerless, Daisy." Daisy looked up, startled by the unexpected words. As Daisy stared, the ethereal figure of her past self seemed to shift, revealing a majestic, winged being with a crown, its presence radiating immense power and a serene, yet melancholic, aura. The majestic winged crowned figure introduced himself as the Emerald Spirit King, the guardian who bore the same sorrows as his beloved kin. He acknowledged Daisy's presence, noting that the creature had crossed from the realm of monsters to the human world without any regard, causing too many people to be hurt. Daisy looked up at him, surprised by his declaration. With a commanding gesture, the Emerald Spirit King extended his hand and ordered the roots to bind the monstrous behemoth. The ground beneath them erupted as thick, gnarled roots surged forth, coiling around the struggling beast, which let out a pained groan as it was ensnared. The behemoth thrashed violently, its immense strength testing the limits of the binding roots. It roared in frustration, but the roots held firm, tightening their grip. The Emerald Spirit King watched, his expression unwavering as the creature struggled. As the roots continued to constrict, the behemoth's magical defenses visibly faltered and collapsed. Seizing the critical moment, the male adventurer, positioned on a makeshift platform, urged his companion to act. He then unleashed a powerful attack, shouting, "Spiral Inferno!" as flames erupted around him. The behemoth roared in agony as the male adventurer's attack struck. Below, the female adventurer, her eyes burning with resolve, declared her vengeance for Mark. She swiftly drew her blade, preparing to execute a quick-draw sword technique with deadly precision. She lunged forward, her blade ablur, and unleashed her devastating scythe cleave attack. The powerful strike sliced through the behemoth, causing a massive impact that reverberated through the air. The combined assault proved too much for the behemoth, which finally collapsed, defeated. The male adventurer, alongside his female companion, exclaimed their success, relieved that the monstrous threat had been neutralized. As the adventurers celebrated, the behemoth's massive form began to crumble, dissipating into dust and debris. The ground around it was scarred and broken, a testament to the fierce battle that had just taken place. The female adventurer watched the monster's demise, her expression grim. The female adventurer then turned her attention to Daisy, who was sitting on the ravaged ground, looking up with wide, slightly dazed eyes. She called out Daisy's name, concern etched on her face. Moments later, Marcus arrived, carrying a heavy bag of potions. He complained about the difficulty of transporting them all, but confirmed he had brought them as requested. Daisy, still on the ground, thanked him and instructed him to begin distributing the potions to the injured people. Marcus, though calling her reckless, agreed to the task. Mark, still bandaged and recovering, stirred awake, his eyes snapping open as he realized his surroundings. He questioned his memory, wondering if he had truly been injured. Suddenly, a woman with long, dark hair, Leisha, embraced him tightly, her relief palpable as she called out his name. Leisha, still clinging to Mark, expressed her profound relief, admitting she thought it was all over. Daisy, standing nearby, gently patted Leisha's head, acknowledging that she had arrived just in time, allowing everyone to finally relax. As the immediate tension subsided, a male adventurer, still in his armor, looked at Daisy with a bewildered expression, asking if she was a saint. Daisy, startled by the question, simply looked back at him. He continued, recalling how she had protected them all and the entire country, shining with a bright, green light when the tree roots emerged from nowhere to hold the behemoth down. Another armored figure, a deputy vice commander, approached Daisy's older brother, requesting a moment to speak with him. Daisy, overhearing the conversation, wondered if that was truly how her actions had appeared from the outside, denying the implication that she was a saint. Daisy's older brother, acknowledging the deputy vice commander, stated that he would leave the rest to him. He then turned to Daisy, informing her that by the Minister of War's authority, he was taking her with him. He gently patted her head as she sat in a carriage, the door closing with a heavy thud. Inside the carriage, Daisy's older brother expressed his serious concern, shaking his head slightly. He told her that seeing her in such a dangerous place had shaken him to his core. He then directly asked her if she was a saint. Daisy, looking down, apologized for making him worry, but he quickly added that he was also grateful she was safe. He explained that he could hear all the details later, but first, he needed to confirm one thing. Meanwhile, the winged crowned figure, appearing ethereal, spoke of Daisy as their gentle, beloved child. Daisy, however, insisted that she was not a saint, explaining that she had only received a blessing from the Spirit King. Daisy's older brother, holding a glowing appraisal card, exclaimed in shock, realizing the truth. The card revealed Daisy von Priestleria as the second daughter of a viscount's family, with a profession as an alchemist and a gift as the beloved child of the Emerald Spirit King. He stared at the card, utterly stunned, as Daisy looked on. She stared at the appraisal card, her eyes wide with disbelief. The last time she checked, it only indicated she had received the Emerald Spirit King's blessing, but now it declared her his beloved child. She wondered aloud what could possibly be the matter. Her older brother, clutching his head in shock, questioned what in the world was happening. She calmly explained that the Emerald Spirit King had helped her during the recent battle, suggesting that perhaps the change in her status occurred at that very moment. He then elaborated on the immense implications of her new title, explaining that becoming the beloved child of the Emerald Spirit King meant she could practically become queen of any country she desired. He warned that wars were not unheard of, breaking out over the power associated with the Emerald Spirit King. Her father, joining the grave discussion, stressed that such a blessing was far too great to be bestowed upon a young daughter of a single nation. He urged her to deeply consider her future path before others discovered her true status. She, however, remained composed, stating her future wishes were already decided, and gently told him to stop worrying so much. She then declared her ambition to become an independent alchemist and open her very own atelier within their country, a place where everyone would be welcome, regardless of social status. Her father, a gentle smile gracing his lips, accepted her decision, affirming his role as her father was to support her as much as he could. Overwhelmed with emotion, she embraced him tightly, expressing her profound love. She then thought to herself that she had already gathered enough money to make her dream a reality. A few days later, Daisy, her father, and her older brother stood in the audience chambers, receiving commendation for their efforts in a monster subjugation. Outside, the sounds of construction echoed as workers began repairing the damaged structures. The king, seated on his throne, expressed his pride in the warriors and their swift response, which had successfully avoided civilian casualties. Daisy's father humbly thanked him, while her older brother added that they had endured and withstood the behemoth. The king then commanded them to immediately repair the gates, acknowledging the uncertainty of future monster attacks, and declared that all available forces had been mobilized, counting on their continued efforts. As she slowly moved away from the audience, her father called out to her, addressing her formally as Daisy Vaughn Priestlaria. He acknowledged her bravery, noting that even though she was still very young, she had risked her life on the battlefield handing out potions, and he had been informed of her skills as an alchemist. Having just received the king's commendation for their efforts, Daisy's older brother expressed his deepest gratitude, acknowledging that thanks to their actions, the number of casualties and serious injuries was much lower than anticipated. Daisy, surprised by the praise, felt honored by his words. However, when asked if she had been involved in the binding of the magical beast with tree roots, Daisy humbly denied any significant participation. She clarified that the results were entirely the divine work and gift from the Spirit King, explaining that the Emerald Spirit King had heard her pleas and graciously offered his assistance. She recalled being filled with sadness and sorrow during the battle, seeing so many people being hurt. Her older brother, along with the other officials, pressed her further, questioning why the Emerald Spirit King would listen to her plea or offer assistance. They demanded to know the nature of her relationship with the powerful entity. Daisy then revealed the truth, declaring that she was the beloved child of the Emerald Spirit King. Her older brother and the officials listened intently as she prepared to explain the full implications to everyone present. Her older brother, still processing the gravity of the situation, asked if they could confirm this claim with appraisal magic. The other officials reacted with visible shock and disbelief, exclaiming in surprise and questioning if such a thing could truly be possible. Daisy's older brother, now seated, gave a firm yes to the request for verification, then turned to the masked appraiser, Heinrich, and commanded him to verify the claim. Daisy watched, a slight frown on her face. The masked appraiser, Heinrich, confirmed Daisy's status, stating that Miss Daisy was indeed the beloved child of the Emerald Spirit King. Immediately, her older brother issued a severe warning, declaring that anyone who broke the rule of secrecy would face severe punishment, and that what happened in that room must never leave it. Heinrich leaned in, listening intently. Her older brother, still emphasizing the gravity of the situation, reiterated the importance of the secret. The other officials, visibly shocked, murmured about the implications, recalling the prophecy that a country where the favored child of the Emerald Spirit King appeared will be blessed with peace and prosperity. The ancient lore also warned that a country which lost its beloved child was certain to become barren and deserted, its people taken to the spirit realm, and the land abandoned. This dire consequence would befall them if they were to fall out of grace with the beloved child. Daisy, startled, watched as her older brother, the king, knelt before her, his head bowed in a gesture of profound respect and supplication. Other high-ranking officials followed suit, kneeling in unison. Daisy, overwhelmed, pleaded with her brother to rise, but he steadfastly refused, stating he could not comply. He explained that as the child favored by the Emerald Spirit King, he knelt for the sake of his country and all its people, imploring her to remain in their land and continue as she had been. Daisy, after a moment of thought, agreed to his request, but only if he would treat her like any other alchemist. Her brother, as king, swore to protect and uphold her wishes, which included her desire to one day gain independence and open her own atelier. Her brother, deeply moved by her humble request, expressed his admiration. Daisy, still flustered by the gravity of the situation, urged him to return to his throne. He acknowledged her wishes, declaring that he would assist in the creation and safe running of her atelier, watching and helping from the shadows. Daisy and her father stood nearby, listening intently. Sometime later, Daisy, accompanied by Yulia and her father, found herself in a bustling market. As they passed a stall, Daisy's attention was suddenly drawn to something or someone specific. She turned to her father, asking for a moment of his time, her expression earnest. He, along with Yulia and another female adventurer, looked on curiously. Daisy then approached a male adventurer, who immediately recognized her. He expressed his profound gratitude, acknowledging her as the one who had saved him previously. He thanked her again, explaining that the doctor assured him he would regain full use of his arm after proper rest, as Daisy inquired about his injury, which was still supported by a sling. She admitted that her previous actions had indeed led to significant trouble. Mark, the adventurer she had saved, remarked on her presence on the front lines, while Lisha, his companion, questioned if Daisy was a noble's daughter, given her attire. Following Lisha's direct inquiry, she introduced herself, stating her name. Mark then formally introduced himself, and Daisy, in turn, offered her own name, completing the introductions. Mark explained that they were at the reception for bereaved families, currently sorting out the necessary formalities. He then revealed that the young child with them, Mina, was an orphan whose parents, also adventurers, had perished in a recent battle. He continued, explaining that while they were caring for Mina for the time being, they had their own missions approaching and could not remain indefinitely. Daisy expressed her sincere condolences upon hearing the tragic news. Just then, Daisy's father arrived, interrupting their conversation. Mark recognized him as being from the Mage Corps, and Daisy's father introduced himself, apologizing for the intrusion. Daisy's father then turned to Mina, asking if she had any relatives or anywhere else she could go. Mina shook her head, indicating she had nowhere, but quickly added that she was quite skilled at housework and truly enjoyed cooking. Mina looked up, surprised by the sudden attention. Daisy's father, considering her words, then offered for her to come to his house, suggesting she take her time there to figure out her next steps. Mark acknowledged the generous offer. Mina bowed deeply, accepting the offer and promising to do her best to be useful, stating she would be in their care from then on. Her status window appeared, detailing her skills in cooking, laundry, cleaning, and revealing her nascent abilities in both wood and fire magic. At the Grand Priestleria household, a new guest arrived. Mina, a young girl with animal ears and a tail, was informed that she would be staying for a while. She shyly introduced herself, expressing gratitude for the welcome. Her older brother, Daisy's brother, warmly welcomed Mina, stating that they would enjoy their first meal together. Yulia, observing the new arrival, found Mina to be an adorable young lady. As the family gathered for dinner, Mina felt a wave of nervousness wash over her in this new, unfamiliar place. She sat at the large dining table, observing the spread of food. Her tail wagged subtly as she eyed a piece of bread, wondering if it was truly acceptable for her to eat it. She leaned closer, sniffing the air, noting its fragrant smell with a subtle hint of fruit. Daisy, noticing Mina's hesitation, encouraged her to help herself, explaining that the bread was one of her specialties. Mina, her heart thumping, carefully tore off a piece. As she tasted it, Mina's eyes widened in shock and delight. The fruity taste spread through her mouth, and she found it incredibly soft and utterly amazing. A young boy at the table commented that delicious food was simply delicious, while Yulia added that her brother only ever offered a simple, delicious when eating. Daisy, in turn, suggested that Yulia's description was quite accurate, implying her own skill. The young boy then asked Daisy about her new creation, wondering if it was a crispy Danish pastry. Daisy confirmed it was, and he then reminded her that she had wanted to try making another type of bread. Mina, still holding the bread, looked up as Daisy's older brother suggested that she help them make it. He found the idea of an interesting new texture for them to try quite appealing. Mina's tail wagged excitedly as she enthusiastically agreed, declaring her strong interest in trying to bake. They decided to undertake the baking project the very next day. Mina, observing the intricate process, questioned the cost of butter, finding it very expensive. Yulia clarified that folding it meant repeatedly incorporating butter into the dough. Daisy listened intently, absorbing the instructions. Despite Mina's concern, Yulia dismissed the worry about the butter's expense for this particular baking session, stating they would simply make it. Mina reacted with surprise at such a luxurious approach, while Daisy pondered if this meant they couldn't make it often. To begin, Yulia demonstrated the technique, using a rolling pin to thin the butter into a sheet before it would be folded into the dough. Daisy, eager to participate, prepared to try her hand at the task. However, the task proved more challenging than anticipated. She struggled to flatten the solid butter, finding it too hard to manage, despite her strenuous efforts. Mina and Yulia watched her exertion. Seeing her struggle, Yulia offered to take over the difficult butter flattening step. Daisy, visibly relieved, readily agreed, suggesting she could focus on preparing the dough in the meantime. With the butter handled, the focus shifted to the other ingredients. Laid out on the counter were bread flour, normal flour, milk, sugar, salt, and eggs, all components Mina recognized for making ordinary bread. Then, Mina revealed their secret weapon, yeast. She explained that this ingredient was crucial for making the bread wonderfully fluffy and soft, captivating Daisy and Yulia with the revelation. After the dough was prepared, Yulia carefully placed it into an old, disused refrigerator to rest overnight. Mina and Daisy watched, curious about the waiting period and impressed by the meticulous process. The next day dawned, and Mina, full of anticipation, declared her excitement for the next step. The dough and butter sheets were now ready, poised for the intricate process of folding the butter into the dough. With the new day's task at hand, Daisy began the laborious process. She stretched out the dough, wrapped it around the butter sheet, and then folded it, preparing to repeat the demanding action multiple times. She, still focused on the baking process, observed Mina's deft movements. Daisy mused that this must be the difference in cooking experience, noting how Mina made it look effortlessly easy. Yulia, watching Mina, remarked that she was quite skilled and would likely pick up the job easily. Mina, however, despite her tail wagging with enthusiasm, confessed that it was actually quite hard work. After a short break, they discussed the next step, letting the dough rest for another hour before dividing it into squares. Following the resting period, Mina carefully brushed a beaten egg over the surface of the dough, preparing it for the oven. Soon after, the prepared dough was slid into the hot oven. After some time, the freshly baked bread emerged, golden and glistening. "Ta-da!" the group exclaimed, marveling at the delicious appearance of the finished product. As the aroma filled the air, the group gathered around, eager to taste their creation. Mina, her eyes wide with anticipation, asked if she could try a little piece. Yulia, equally excited, readily agreed, inviting everyone to try it. Daisy took a bite, her expression one of pure delight as she declared the inside fluffy and moist. Mina, savoring her own piece, added that it was incredibly crispy. Daisy, still relishing the taste, thought aloud about how they rarely made such treats due to the amount of butter required. Yulia, however, was already envisioning the future, proclaiming that this bread would revolutionize their dining table and become her new favorite snack. Daisy's older brother returned to the Priestleria residence, announcing that the magic core had just come back from an expedition and he had brought her a souvenir. He presented her with an antidote plant, explaining that he knew she was looking for alchemy ingredients and thought she could make good use of it. Daisy was overjoyed, exclaiming her excitement over the antidote plant and immediately planning to make a plot for it in the field. Later, as Daisy worked in her alchemy lab, a young boy named Marcus approached her, respectfully asking if she could check his potion. She mused that because of all the earlier commotion, she never got the chance to make chantilly cream, but now there were just more and more things she wanted to do. She took the potion from him, examining its contents. It was a medicinal potion of high quality, providing 1.5 times the normal recovery amount and possessing a gentle sweetness to taste. Suddenly, Seabass, the butler, appeared, sternly admonishing Marcus to mind his manners. Daisy, however, confirmed to Marcus that his potion passed, noting that the quality of his potions was now consistent, much to his delight. Seabass then grabbed Marcus, declaring that he looked like he needed a little re-education, and began dragging him away. Daisy smiled, wishing Marcus good luck, while he, looking distressed, offered a quick apology to her. With the distraction gone, Daisy completed an antidote potion. She observed that it was merely a medicinal antidote of good quality, capable of healing most common poisons, but having no effect on stronger ones, much like the ones available at any store. Her research then led her to a revelation. The main ingredient for a powerful antidote potion was a Mandric root. She recalled the terrifying fact that when one pulled it out, its scream could kill. Daisy considered that to create such a powerful antidote, she would indeed need a Mandric root. She pondered issuing a subjugation request, but then questioned if she would even get permission to collect them, given their dangerous nature. Unbeknownst to her, a small fairy peeked in from above, observing her. The fairy, having heard Daisy's thoughts, suddenly burst into the room, vehemently exclaiming that Mandrics were kin to the fairies and that killing them for subjugation was absolutely out of the question. Still feeling the weight of her previous objection, the fairy looked apologetic as Daisy considered the implications. If Mandrics were truly fairies, then obtaining them would prove even more challenging. She, still remorseful, offered to make inquiries on Daisy's behalf. Daisy, however, remained focused on the practicalities, asking if only the root material was truly necessary. The fairy paused, contemplating this detail. With a soft flutter of her wings, the fairy departed, leaving Daisy to her thoughts. A few days later, Daisy tended to her garden, watering the plants, all the while wondering if the fairy would return as promised. Suddenly, she discovered a beautiful flower, prompting her to wonder who might have planted such a lovely bloom for her. Her gaze then shifted, noticing something else growing nearby, something she hadn't seen before. To Daisy's utter astonishment, a small, sentient Mandric root spun out of the earth, greeting her with a cheerful expression. Daisy stumbled back in shock as the Mandric explained that it and its kin had heard she needed them and had moved to her location immediately. Another Mandric emerged, adding that the ground around the old spirit tree was pleasant and the field felt quite nice for them. Daisy, still amazed, could only stammer a question about their ability to move. Just then, the fairy reappeared, confirming that she had indeed brought the Mandrics with her. Daisy, still processing the situation, questioned if such an act was truly permissible. The fairy reassured Daisy, explaining that the Mandrics were willing to share their roots after a short while and seemed to enjoy their new home. However, she issued a stern warning. Daisy must never pull them out on her own, as they become easily frightened and scream incredibly loudly. She had received the Mandric roots, and now Daisy felt a surge of excitement, believing she could finally create the powerful antidote potion. She held up a small cluster of the roots, her eyes sparkling with determination. A few days later, Daisy began her work, meticulously following the textbook instructions to craft the antidote. However, her efforts yielded only a degraded potion, its quality surprisingly low, as the essential compounds could not be properly extracted from the root ingredient. She continued to observe the simmering concoction, a thoughtful expression on her face. From her appraisal, it seemed that the very act of boiling the root was ruining the entire ingredient. The problem, she realized, lay with the actual root extraction method itself. Despite her careful consideration, the potion remained useless, bubbling ominously like industrial waste. Daisy clenched her teeth, her frustration evident as she realized her efforts had been in vain. Meanwhile, at the royal castle, Prince William lay gravely ill in his bed. His older brother stood over him, his face etched with worry, urgently calling for the court physician to be summoned immediately. The king, his voice filled with concern, demanded to know William's condition. The court physician, a wise old man, examined the ailing prince with a thoughtful hum, his expression grim. The physician confirmed that William had been poisoned again, but this time, the poison appeared to be man-made, a revelation that caused William's brother to clutch his head in distress. He further explained that the poison from a last incident had been improved upon, making William's current condition much harder to treat. William's brother, alarmed, questioned what was wrong. The physician warned that the antidotes currently available might not have any effect. To be safe, he suggested making arrangements for a more effective antidote potion to be created, prompting William's brother to demand clarification. The king, gently comforting his suffering son, promised William that he would be cured soon. He then turned to William's brother, his voice firm, ordering him to go to the Ministry of Finance and collect as many antidotes as he could. William's brother immediately acknowledged the command. Daisy, weary from her efforts, pondered the complexities of her task. She had been experimenting with various methods, but working with Mandric roots proved particularly tricky. She considered that the issue might not be the antidote grass itself, but rather the method of extraction. Perhaps if she extracted the Mandric root first, it would yield better results. Suddenly, the door burst open with a loud slam, and her older brother, Heinrich, rushed in, calling out her name with urgency. Surprised to see him, Daisy inquired if he was supposed to be at work. He quickly asked if she had made any antidote potions, to which she replied that she had a few regular ones, but was currently focused on experimenting to create a powerful antidote potion. Her brother, relieved, explained that it was an emergency and urged her to finish the powerful antidote potion as soon as possible, believing it would be exactly what was needed. Daisy, though unsure if she could succeed, resolved to try her best, understanding that if her father deemed it serious, then it truly was. She continued her arduous work, meticulously mixing ingredients, achieving some success in the initial stages, but repeatedly failing at the crucial extraction process. Finally, with a sigh of relief, Daisy succeeded. She had created a high-quality, powerful antidote potion, capable of curing all poisons, though it would not remove other status abnormalities. At the royal castle, Daisy and her brother, the deputy chief mage, arrived with the antidote. Her brother expressed profound gratitude to Daisy, acknowledging that all previous antidote potions had failed to help Prince William, and he was forever in her debt. Daisy clasped her hands, praying for the potion to work, observing how much the young prince was suffering. Her brother then carefully administered the powerful antidote to William. He lay in the royal bed, racked by a persistent cough, his small body trembling. Daisy's older brother, the king, watched with a worried expression as Dr. Madra examined the ailing Prince William. The king urgently questioned the doctor about the prince's condition, to which Dr. Madra calmly replied that he would confirm his findings. Moments later, Dr. Madra, having completed his magical assessment, informed the king that the poison had indeed been cured. However, he cautioned that because the poison had been in Prince William's system for some time, his stomach had sustained damage, though not so severely that a potion could not remedy it. The king, still anxious, immediately requested a healing potion. As Prince William drifted into a peaceful sleep, his breathing now even, Dr. Madra reassured the king that the worst had passed. He explained that by the time the prince awoke, he should be fully recovered. The king, his tension easing, gently patted his son's head. The king leaned back, a profound sense of relief washing over him. He admitted that he had been truly worried for a while, his expression softening with gratitude. Turning to Dr. Madra and Daisy, the king expressed his heartfelt gratitude, stating that as a father, he was truly thankful for their efforts to save his son. Dr. Madra bowed respectfully, acknowledging the king's words, while Daisy also offered a polite bow. After the immediate crisis had passed, the king, Daisy's older brother, approached her. He apologized, explaining that he needed to speak with her alone and could not afford for anyone to overhear their conversation. He then closed the door to the royal castle room, ensuring their privacy. With a serious expression, the king then asked Daisy if it was possible to synthesize a truth serum. He emphasized that what he was about to say must never leave the room, and clarified that he specifically wished to ask Daisy for another favor. Daisy, her brow furrowed in thought, inquired about the nature of a truth serum. Her brother explained it was a drug that compelled the person taking it to answer any questions truthfully. Daisy recalled reading about something with a similar effect in a book Her Highness had given her. The king then revealed that they had a lead on the poisoning suspect, but believed the perpetrator was likely working for someone else, and they needed to uncover the true mastermind. He asked Daisy to inform him once she had checked for the necessary ingredients. After returning home, Daisy walked purposefully into a room where her father was working at his desk. She announced excitedly that she had found what she was looking for. Holding an open book, Daisy's eyes widened with triumph. She exclaimed, "This is it, Chatty Serum." She enthusiastically informed her older brother that she had found the necessary ingredients for the truth serum, which she referred to as the Chatty Serum. All she needed were some chatting mushrooms and dana grass, and she was confident she could create it. Her brother then instructed her to come closer, and she obediently sat down beside him, allowing him to place a comforting hand on her shoulder. As she rested on his lap, she inquired if the culprits would be arrested. He explained that if they used the serum to uncover the mastermind, the medicine she created would not be like the others she had made in the past. It would not have a happy ending for someone. He clarified that the culprits would likely face the death penalty, or, if fortunate, life in prison. She then asked if the people who tried to harm the prince would be punished, and he confirmed that they would, ensuring the prince's safety from that point forward. She looked down, contemplating the gravity of her creation, realizing that the medicine she made could force His Highness to sentence someone to death. Her brother gently patted her head, asking if she still wished to proceed, knowing the severe implications. She remained silent, her expression conflicted. He offered to explain to His Highness that she simply could not make the serum if she did not wish to, absolving her of the burden. With a determined gaze, she declared that even if it meant someone had to pay the price for their crimes, she would make the serum to protect Her Majesty's smile. He thanked her, pulling her into a tight embrace. After a moment, he looked away, his expression thoughtful. Later that night, Daisy slept soundly in her bed, the sign on her door bearing her name, as the Grand Priestleria estate stood quietly under the moonlit sky. As she continued to sleep, a large, shadowy wolf-like figure materialized beside her bed, its glowing eyes fixed upon her peaceful form. Daisy stirred from her sleep, her body feeling unusually heavy. As the morning light filtered through, she slowly began to awaken, hearing the gentle chirping of birds outside her window. As she opened her eyes, she found herself face to face with a massive, furry creature, its head resting beside hers on the bed. A soft growl rumbled from its chest. She blinked, her mind struggling to comprehend the sight. A moment of confusion gave way to utter shock as she realized the creature was a colossal wolf, right there in her bed. Daisy, still reeling from the surprise, managed to ask who it was. The massive wolf then began to rise, its sheer size becoming even more apparent as it towered over her, stepping off the bed with a heavy thud. The creature introduced itself as Fenra, the sacred beast, and a retainer of the Emerald Spirit. It explained that it was there under the direct orders of the Emerald Spirit King to protect her, Daisy-sama. Daisy's eyes widened further in disbelief. A legendary being she had only ever read about in books was now sitting right in front of her, and it was Fenra. The mention of the Spirit King only added to her astonishment. Fenra, sensing her apprehension, reiterated its purpose, stating that if it was not by her side at all times, it could not protect her. Daisy, however, was more concerned with the practical implications, asking if this meant the sacred beast would be living in her house. She pondered the impossibility of keeping such a massive creature a secret within their home. She decided it would be best to discuss the matter with her father first, while Fenra casually scratched an itch on its head. Just as Daisy was contemplating her next move, a knock came from her door. Her older brother entered, greeting her and immediately bringing up the topic of the material from yesterday. He stood at the doorway, his expression a mix of surprise and concern as Daisy, standing before the colossal Fenra, greeted him with a nervous, "A very good morning to you, father." He questioned her, asking exactly who her friend was, while Daisy stammered, attempting to explain the sudden appearance of the sacred beast in her room, a situation that had unfolded rapidly within the family estate. After hearing her explanation, he knelt, conceding that he would allow Fenra to live with them, a decision that brought a gasp of relief and joy from Daisy. However, he quickly added a crucial condition. They must conceal Fenra's true nature as a sacred beast from others, as its mere existence was a significant matter that could lead to unwanted speculation about the beloved child. He acknowledged the truth in his own words, pondering the implications, while Fenra, with a resolute gaze, declared that if Daisy needed to go into town, it must accompany her. To facilitate this, he produced a crest, explaining that wearing it would prove Fenra was a contracted familiar, which should be sufficient. He then asked Fenra if it would be acceptable to introduce it as Daisy's wolf familiar when they were in public. Fenra readily agreed, stating it had no objections if it was necessary to fulfill its duty of protecting the beloved child. Daisy, however, then pointed out that wandering around town with Fenra at its current immense size would still attract unwanted attention. In response to Daisy's concern, Fenra dramatically shrank, transforming into a much smaller, wolf-like creature, leaving Daisy utterly astonished. The now miniature Fenra explained that it had never possessed a name, so Daisy was free to call it whatever she wished. Daisy, delighted by its new form and the ability to shrink, happily began to pet the small wolf. Daisy, considering the possibilities, suggested the name Leaf, finding it had a pleasant ring to it, and Fenra seemed to accept her choice. She had received permission from her father to join the expedition, with Leaf as her guard. Her older brother would accompany them to appraise the ingredients for a chatty serum, a mission ordered by His Majesty. A few days later, the group gathered at the Northwest Gate, ready to depart. As the expedition prepared to leave, her brother confirmed everyone's presence, stating their destination was the Orc Forest, southeast of the capital, a mission focused solely on collecting ingredients. With everyone assembled, he gave a command to move out. A female academy student, however, interjected with a warning, reminding him that they should expect to encounter enemies. The expedition galloped away from the capital, a line of riders and Leaf moving swiftly across the open landscape. A small rabbit, startled by their approach, watched them pass from a grassy hill. Daisy, her spirits high, expressed her joy at riding Leaf, finding it far more liberating than her previous ingredient collection missions. Her brother, riding alongside her, suggested they review the mission details before reaching their destination. He explained that the ingredients they sought were located in the orc's forest. While a lone orc posed little threat, they were typically encountered in groups, making the situation more dangerous. Daisy, absorbing the information, then inquired about the higher-ranked types of orcs that formed these larger, more formidable groups. Her brother confirmed that these included high orcs, orc generals, and occasionally even an orc king. He stressed the importance of vigilance, warning that even a confrontation with a lower-ranking orc could escalate into a much tougher fight if they let their guard down. Daisy acknowledged his serious tone. Finally, the expedition reached the entrance of the orc forest. Daisy's brother announced their arrival to the deputy chief mage and instructed everyone to dismount and begin their search for materials. As the group prepared to enter the forest, the deputy chief mage addressed Daisy's brother, suggesting they maintain a protective formation around Daisy as they move forward. She scanned the dense foliage, her brow furrowed in thought. I don't see anything that resembles what we're looking for, she murmured, the rustling of leaves and distant caws of birds the only reply. Suddenly, a metallic clang echoed through the trees as one of the armored soldiers drew his sword, shouting, "Orc spotted." A guttural growl confirmed the sighting. Her brother immediately reacted, pushing her back to safety while commanding, "Daisy, fall back. Everyone, prepare for battle." Just then, two more orcs emerged from the undergrowth, their heavy steps thudding against the forest floor. The armored soldier moved with practiced precision, his sword swishing through the air before clanging against an unseen foe. An orc, massive and brutish, swung its arm in a wide, powerful arc, the air whooshing with its force. With a decisive blow, the soldier struck down one orc, but another, smaller one, managed to slip away into the undergrowth with a rustle. He apologized to Daisy's brother, who calmly assessed the situation. "It probably ran to call for reinforcements after judging our numbers," he stated, his voice firm. "Be sure to stay on alert." Despite the recent skirmish, she continued her search, her steps light. Suddenly, her eyes widened. Over there. Those ones are chatting mushrooms," she exclaimed, her heart pounding with excitement at the discovery. The moment of discovery was shattered by a sudden, heavy thud. "They're coming from the front," her brother shouted, his voice urgent. 3 orcs and 2 larger, more formidable high orcs stomped through the underbrush, their heavy footsteps shaking the ground. He quickly warned her, "Wait, Daisy. Not yet." As the horde of orcs charged forward, her brother extended his hand, a surge of magical energy gathering. "Here they come," he declared, unleashing a powerful ice spell. Willow of Ice. The frigid magic shot forth, encasing one of the orcs in a cracking shell of ice, eliciting a pained grunt. While the armored soldier clashed with a regular orc, his blade flashing, Daisy's brother focused his attention on the larger threat. "I'll deal with the high orc," he announced, channeling more magic. A swirling orb of ice formed in his hand, rapidly transforming into a sharp projectile. "Glacial Lance," he commanded, launching it with a powerful whoosh. The glacial lance struck true, shattering the ice around one orc and piercing the high orc with a resounding thwack. The high orc roared in pain, clutching its wound, while Daisy's brother stood firm, ready for the next engagement. He had just finished dispatching 5 of the orcs, a feat that left Daisy amazed by his prowess. Fenra, observing the scene, remarked that everyone present seemed quite capable. The armored soldier, having witnessed the swift combat, wondered if that was the last of their attackers, acknowledging the brother's skill as expected. However, the respite was short-lived as 2 new, menacing figures emerged from the shadows, an orc general and, even more alarmingly, an orc king. The ground trembled with their arrival, and the brother, recognizing the gravity of the situation, declared that this would be a completely different fight than before, urging everyone to stay focused. The orc general immediately launched a powerful, leaping attack, prompting the brother to shout a warning as the armored soldier was caught off guard, taking a heavy blow. As the battle intensified, Fenra commanded Daisy to stay behind him, while the armored soldier, recovering from the initial assault, acknowledged the immense strength of their new foe. The brother then unleashed a torrent of ice magic, shouting for everyone to retreat, but the orc general, with a terrifying crack and smash, broke through the icy barrier, proving the magic was insufficient to stop it. With renewed determination, he channeled a more potent spell, crying out the name of his technique, Ice Age Glacier. The soldier, witnessing the massive ice formation, believed they had succeeded, only to realize there was still another threat lurking nearby. Suddenly, the brother cried out Daisy's name as an orc lunged towards her. Fenra, quick as lightning, intercepted the attack, slamming the beast away with a powerful blow. Daisy, relieved and safe, thanked Fenra, affectionately calling him Leaf. He responded with a dismissive humph, stating it was merely a simple task. The brother, sighing in exhaustion, believed the battle was finally over. However, to everyone's shock, the orc general emerged from the shattered ice, seemingly unharmed, leaving them to question how even such powerful magic had no effect. He looked at the formidable orc general, expressing concern that even with their numbers, defeating such a tough foe would be difficult. Fenra, beside him, instructed Daisy to chant the spell Rose Whip and aim it directly at the orc. Following the instruction, Daisy chanted Rose Whip with determination, unleashing a powerful, glowing, whip-like attack that surged forward. The attack struck the orc general, binding its massive form with glowing energy whips. It roared in surprise and struggled violently, the bindings straining and beginning to snap under its immense power. As the orc general began to collapse, the armored soldier urged them to finish it off quickly. The massive foe finally fell, seemingly defeated. Moments later, a powerful surge of ice magic erupted, likely from Daisy's brother, further ensuring the enemy's demise. The female adventurer, witnessing the display, remarked on the incredible nature of the spell. She considered the situation, realizing she could not reveal the true nature of her father's freezing debuff magic. Instead, she decided to attribute it to a type of earth magic, acknowledging internally that her father's debuff had indeed made a significant difference. Daisy's brother then declared that the collected materials should be more than sufficient. Daisy agreed, and with Fenra resting in its smaller form, he instructed everyone to mount up, announcing they would move to the next gathering spot. As they rode, a sudden commotion drew their attention. A carriage ahead was under attack, besieged by a group of orcs and high orcs. The armored soldier confirmed the attack, identifying the assailants as orcs. Daisy's brother, without hesitation, decided they would provide reinforcements and spurred his horse forward, commanding everyone to follow. As the orcs pressed their attack, Yulia urged Daisy to use the same magic she had employed earlier. Daisy, determined, affirmed she would try, even as the sounds of battle intensified around them. Without hesitation, she unleashed her Rose Whip, a torrent of thorny vines lashing out, striking one of the orcs with immense force, causing it to recoil in pain. Moments later, with the immediate danger averted, a merchant approached the group, expressing his profound gratitude for their intervention in such a perilous situation. He addressed the knights and everyone else present, acknowledging their bravery. The merchant, introducing himself as Oliver from the royal capital, apologized that his daughter, who was in the carriage, could not personally express her thanks due to issues with her legs. However, a knight quickly interjected, clarifying that if Oliver wished to thank anyone, it should be the young lady, Daisy, who had single-handedly defeated the orcs. Daisy, taken aback by the sudden attention, humbly dismissed the praise. Oliver, however, was utterly astonished, bowing deeply and exclaiming his amazement that someone so young could wield such powerful magic. He then asked her to wait a moment, returning with a small, elegant box. Oliver presented it to Daisy as a token of his heartfelt gratitude, hoping she would accept the humble gift, which was a beautiful hair ornament. As Oliver bid them farewell, Daisy, clutching the new ornament, beamed with delight, exclaiming how cute it was and offering her sincere thanks. Later, in the vast expanse of the Orkenia Plains, Daisy and Yulia continued their quest. Daisy, with a triumphant cry, held up a freshly dug plant, announcing she had found the coveted Donna grass. The next day, Daisy reflected on the arduous task of gathering all the necessary materials. She acknowledged the difficulty but felt a sense of accomplishment, though she still worried about the Donna grass and the mushrooms, knowing she needed to be mindful and plan carefully to avoid waste. She recalled a previous attempt to combine extraction ingredients that had gone terribly wrong, resulting in nothing but industrial waste. This experience made her realize the critical need to carefully determine the precise extraction conditions, especially since this was her first time using mushrooms as an alchemy ingredient. She pondered if finally chopping them would be necessary. As she stirred a beaker, observing the chatty extract, she noted that its extraction was possible at a low temperature, indicating its volatility at high heat. The extract was a high-quality medicinal base, with all its components fully separated. With a soft clink, she completed the extraction of the chatty mushrooms, pouring the liquid into another vessel. She confirmed that boiling had indeed been the correct approach. Next, she considered the temptation extract, noting that its roots had proven quite difficult to process, which meant the entire root of the Donna grass had to be used for its extraction. This extract, too, was a high-quality medicinal base with all components fully extracted. She carefully combined the two distinct extracts, hoping to elicit a specific reaction. She reflected on the intriguing development of magic stones, which had only recently become an indispensable element in alchemy. A moment of triumph washed over her as she successfully created the chatty serum. The medicine, once consumed, would make the user favorably disposed towards the administrator and incapable of lying for a duration dependent on the dosage. She felt immense relief, knowing she had achieved her goal. She carefully sealed the vial, reassuring herself that everything would be fine. Her resolve hardened as she affirmed that she was creating this serum specifically to protect His Highness. A slight tremor in her hands betrayed her underlying tension. A few days later, while Daisy was out with Yulia and Kate, a merchant leaned in conspiratorially, asking if she had heard about the recent incident. Meanwhile, Yulia, holding a basket, inquired if gathering flour and eggs was all that remained on their list. Daisy gasped in shock as the merchant explained the gravity of the situation. He revealed that the powerful noble, the Marquis, had been a mastermind behind the attempt to harm His Highness and had been sentenced to death. Daisy's eyes widened, processing the chilling news that even if the attempt failed, the Marquis had still tried to harm the prince. Yulia called out to Daisy, who was already turning away, her expression grim. Daisy informed Kate that she was heading home and instructed Fenra, whom she called Leaf, to accompany her. Kate watched her go, a worried look on her face. Daisy hurried up the stairs inside her home, the sound of a door slamming echoing behind her. Fenra, lying on the floor, looked up as she called his name. Leaf, her older brother, concerned for Daisy, asked Fenra if she would at least speak with him. Fenra, in his majestic wolf form, confirmed that she wished to be left alone for the moment. Fenra remained by the door, patiently waiting, acknowledging he could not enter until Lady Daisy granted him permission. Suddenly, he sat up, his ears perked, sensing a new presence. He looked up, his gaze thoughtful, realizing that what Daisy truly needed in this moment was her father, not him. A door creaked open nearby. Daisy's father, having been informed of the situation, approached her room and gently knocked, asking if he could enter. He stepped inside, finding Daisy hunched over, clearly distressed. He expressed his understanding, noting that Kate had already told him the full story. Daisy, her hand clenched tightly, looked up at her father, her eyes filled with anguish. She questioned if she had truly done the right thing, acknowledging the Marquis's criminality, but struggling with the fact that her potion had ultimately decided his fate. Her father gently placed a comforting hand on her head, speaking her name softly. She confessed her deep fear of the person she might become after creating such a potent potion. He offered a reassuring smile, telling her that the very fact she felt scared demonstrated her growth, and that she had done absolutely nothing wrong. Daisy remained hunched, listening as her father continued, explaining that those who wield the most power, be they alchemists or mages, often hold the greatest influence. He emphasized that matters of life and death always possess two sides, just as in this current situation. Her father then recounted a past mission where he lost control of his magic while capturing bandits, severely injuring one to the point of near death. He admitted he had been terrified of his own power and questioned whether he could continue as a mage. Daisy looked up, surprised, asking if he truly had experienced such doubts. She listened intently as her father continued, explaining that the great power she possessed, much like the one she used to protect His Highness, should not be a source of fear. He clarified that when understood and utilized correctly, such power could become a formidable force for protecting others and fostering happiness. He reassured her that he would always be there to guide her. He advised her to take her time, explore the world, learn from as many people as possible, and ultimately discover the most effective way to wield her unique power. Gently, he patted her head, reminding her that she had ample time for this journey. He then pointed to her chest, emphasizing that the answer she sought would eventually be found within herself. Daisy looked from his finger to his face, still absorbing the weight of his words. A soft creak echoed as the door opened, and Fenra, the great wolf, cautiously peeked inside. Daisy's father, noticing the animal, suggested it was time to allow Leaf Sama back in. Her expression brightened instantly, and she readily agreed. Fenra, with a joyful bark, bounded towards her, leaping into her arms. She embraced the large wolf, apologizing for making him wait. Meanwhile, within the grand royal castle, Daisy's older brother stood before the king and several high-ranking officials. He expressed his profound gratitude to Daisy for protecting their family, acknowledging his regret for involving someone so young in such a difficult conflict. The king, from his imposing throne, addressed Daisy's older brother, inviting him to state his desire. He promised to grant anything within his royal power, attributing their success entirely to the potent potion Daisy had created. Back in a more private setting, Daisy looked up with a resolute expression. She asked her father to promise that he would never again order her to create that specific potion or anything similar to it. Her older brother, seated opposite her, reflected on his past actions. He admitted that he had lacked both resolve and sound judgment at the time, and had not fully grasped the true effects or purpose of the potion he had requested. He confessed that he had merely acted on his own nascent sense of justice, acknowledging his inexperience in such matters. Daisy, still looking at her brother, then declared her sole desire. When she turned 10, she wished to open an atelier in town and live as a humble alchemist. Her brother, understanding her wish, inquired if there was anything else she desired. He then promised to provide her with all possible support when the time came to establish her atelier. Daisy thanked him profusely, and he confirmed his understanding. Daisy, engrossed in her studies, considered her financial standing. She had saved enough from her government work to finally afford a place of her own, perhaps a building like the one she envisioned. Yulia, hearing of the plans, expressed her excitement about the impending move. Daisy confirmed that she was indeed reviewing property documentation, preparing to establish her atelier. Daisy smiled, stating she would be counting on everyone at the new atelier. Nearby, the fairies, who had grown fond of her fields and decided to stay, inquired if they too would be joining her. Moments later, Marcus arrived, announcing he had completed his morning tasks. Daisy, acknowledging his good work, then asked him if there was anything specific he would like to see at the atelier once it was finished. She continued, explaining that they currently had to manually draw and carry water for all their needs, whether for plants or alchemy. Marcus, deep in thought, agreed that a more efficient water system would be highly beneficial. Daisy then suggested that perhaps next time she was off, she could investigate properties closer to rivers. He, delighted by the idea, enthusiastically agreed to look into it, snapping his fingers in determination. As Daisy worked, Mina arrived at the lab, carrying a tray of pastries and apologizing for the intrusion. Daisy welcomed her, remarking on her hard work, and Mina proudly presented her new Danish pastry recipes, hoping Daisy would try them. Daisy took a bite, finding the pastries adorable and the small paper holders incredibly practical. Mina explained that she had crafted the holders specifically to prevent hands from getting messy. Mina then detailed the pastries. One featured syrup-baked peaches, while another contained stewed apples with cinnamon and a custard cream topping. Daisy, savoring the taste, declared them delicious, noting their sweetness, moistness, and fluffy texture. Daisy praised her, declaring her a true professional pâtissier. Mina, blushing at the compliment, confirmed with a cheerful yes that all the meals at Daisy's new atelier would be created by her own hands. She listened intently as Daisy explained that while the property still had 2 years left on its lease, she wanted to begin planning the kind of shop to open immediately. Mina, holding a tray, then inquired if this was one of the properties Daisy was considering for the atelier. Mina fidgeted slightly, then hesitantly asked if her suggestion would cause too much trouble. Daisy, considering the idea, then asked Mina if there was anything she would like to have at the atelier, assuming it already had a kitchen. She then proposed the idea of a bakery within the atelier. Daisy, delighted, exclaimed that it was a novel idea and agreed, expressing her strong desire for many people to try her delicious bread creations. As Daisy diligently scratched notes onto her plans, she realized that the enticing aroma of freshly baked bread could even attract more customers. With a new resolve, she then politely asked Mina to take a seat for a moment. Mina, surprised by the sudden shift, gasped as Daisy revealed her ambitious new plan to build a brand new atelier entirely from scratch. Daisy confidently declared they had ample funds and plenty of time for such an undertaking, proudly displaying a sketch of her envisioned new atelier. Leading Mina to a counter, Daisy welcomed her to the conceptual space, explaining that the right side would be dedicated to customers, with the counter serving as the main point of interaction. She then offered to show Mina their high-quality potions. She further elaborated that no expense should be spared, even on the shelving, because Daisy-sama's products were all of the highest quality, demanding perfect quality control. She pointed to the shelves behind the counter, explaining they would hold stock and would require some form of deterioration prevention effect. Mina demonstrated how the shelves could be quickly restocked from the back. Daisy then clarified that the area behind the main shop would be a larger laboratory, more akin to a workroom. Stepping outside, Mina observed that such an extensive plan would require a considerably large plot of land. Daisy agreed, envisioning a field behind the atelier for cultivating materials and a warehouse for storing stock. She also considered building an irrigation canal from a nearby river to eliminate worries about fetching water. As Mina pondered the ambience, Daisy tapped the blueprints, declaring that the left side of the new atelier would be entirely dedicated to Mina's bakery. She excitedly suggested an open space at the front, much like a trendy cafe, where people could enjoy light meals. Daisy, deep in thought, considered the idea. Mina continued, her enthusiasm growing, proposing fluffy, freshly baked bread and a counter where she could serve customers directly. Daisy listened intently to her vision. Daisy then suggested installing shelves at the counter to display the bread for sale. Mina quickly added that it would be wonderful if hungry adventurers could also eat there, not just buy items to take home. Mina further elaborated, envisioning a complete bakery in the back, equipped with everything needed to make fresh bread daily. Daisy, grateful for the detailed input, meticulously jotted down the requirement for another set of shelves, ensuring they would have the crucial deterioration prevention effect applied. She then considered making fresh desserts and realized a bigger refrigerator would be essential. Daisy, already savoring the imagined aroma of different kinds of baked goods, readily agreed to have a larger one prepared. Daisy then shifted her focus, acknowledging the need for a living space and asking about a second floor. Mina, initially surprised by the idea of a second story, quickly agreed. Daisy, having exhausted her immediate ideas for the ground floor, decided they should begin planning the upper level. As Daisy ascended the stairs, she marveled at the stylish design, noting that the open space in the store below should have a high ceiling, a feature she had always dreamed of. Mina observed her from the upper landing. The second floor would feature a dedicated living area. Daisy proposed setting up a kitchen there for their everyday use, suggesting Mina could cook meals for them all. Further back, individual rooms would be allocated for each of them. Mina, delighted, exclaimed that a space of this size meant they would all be able to eat together, fostering a sense of togetherness. Mina, utterly amazed, declared that the plans looked like they would result in the best atelier imaginable. Daisy, with a satisfied smile, announced that they were finished, welcoming their ideal atelier into existence. She, Daisy, brimming with excitement, loudly affirmed her commitment, declaring she would do her very best. With the detailed plans now finalized, she decided it was time to move forward. Mina, however, looked at her with a slight apprehension, questioning if she was truly capable of such an undertaking, then resolved to herself that she would have to study diligently to hone her cooking and baking skills.